Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 881, Giant Shields. The Divine Emperor Island was a huge cemetery, and the road was lined with many tombstones on both sides. The sacred place of the dragon lineage human was an 8th grade power, and the warriors who were buried in the cemetery were big shots. The ones who were buried on the platforms were core members of the dragon lineage human. The dragon lineage human had a lot of warriors with other surnames apart from Feng. The warriors with other surnames were inferior. Even those at the Soul Sea realm didn't have the qualification to keep their corpses. These powerful warriors were buried in the cemetery after their deaths, and slowly faded into insignificance. The only difference was that their tombstones were in the shape of golden dragon heads, which could be recognized even from a distance. The powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm looked at the tombstones and felt sadness wash over them. If they couldn't open the passage to the upper world, they would never be able to break through to a higher realm. And they would, without a doubt, die if and when they ran out of lifespan. Others would hold big funerals for them, and they would sleep in delicate coffins, slowly fading out of memory. The martial artists of this universe had used their entire lives to cross this limit and escape death. The group encountered a dark forest once they had left the cemetery behind. At the edge of the forest was the tail of the Divine Emperor Island, and at the end of the island was a funnel-shaped area that lined a long, narrow sea. A 20-foot wide road extended through the sea, cutting it into two. It looked like a brown ribbon lying on the surface of the sea, and it formed a wondrous sight. Under the supervision of the white-browed Taoist priest by the West Dragon River, a ceremony had been held to dispel much of the power of the blood sacrifice in the Feather Holy Sea. However, the power of blood sacrifice around the heavenly stellar secret land did not weaken one bit. The golden sea water, like pure molten gold, beat continuously along this narrow road. The power of blood sacrifice in this area was so strong that even the mighty martial artists of the Soul Sea realm couldn't break through. But the power of blood sacrifice didn't work on the dragon lineage human. This was also why these powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm wanted to occupy the corpses. Only then could they safely enter the heavenly stellar secret land. The towering figure of War King Wind stopped in front of the long, narrow road. He turned to everyone and said, "This is the road of saints of the dragon lineage human. The entrance to the heavenly stellar secret land is at the end of this road. But it is not easy to pass the road, so we must be very careful." Hearing his father's warning, Callan asked, "Father, what danger is there on this road?" War King Wind smiled and replied, "You guys have encountered the slow arrow area in the Feather Emperor's secret land before, right?" The juniors nodded. Even now, the memory of the arrows that had flown at them triggered fear in their hearts. If it hadn't been for Zen pushing the magnetic stone forward, it was likely that all of the younger generation martial artists would have been trapped in the slow arrow area. War King Wind continued, "The slow arrow area is located in the Feather Emperor's secret land. In a sense, this road of saints is known as the fast arrow area." Fast arrows? Zen raised an eyebrow. This road is so narrow. How can we avoid the arrows that come at us swiftly? War King Wind smiled and said, "Although the 4 divine kingdoms cannot explore the entire heavenly stellar secret land, we have thought of countless ways to get here. More than a dozen Soul Sea realm martial artists died in the quest to pass through this road of saints. These are all lessons paid for with blood." His gaze landed on Turner. Turner gazed back before saying, "Show us what you have." The 4 Soul Sea realm martial artists from the Harlan Divine Kingdom took out giant shields that were 20 feet long. Zen's gaze scanned them as they stabbed the shields into the ground one by one. There were more than 10 shields present. A rainbow-colored luster emanated from the surface of these shields, and Zen could feel the power of the 5 elements from them. The magnetic stone. Zen's gaze flickered as he asked, "We can't process the magnetic stone, can we?" Zen had noticed the hardness of the magnetic stone before, and the power of the 5 elements within it was extremely chaotic. Because of this, no absolute power could restrain it. Moreover, it was so hard that even if a divine weapon came in contact with it, it could destroy the divine weapon. This meant that even the mighty martial artists of the Soul Sea realm couldn't do anything to the magnetic sacred mountain. At Zen's apprehensive and slightly stunned gaze, Turner smiled proudly and said, "It is true that the magnetic stone cannot be processed. It caused the world to tremble when the magnetic sacred mountain fell, crashing from the sky. A few small fragments scattered across the magnetic sacred mountain, and most of these fragments have been collected by our kingdom." Zen's brow cleared in sudden enlightenment at Turner's explanation. He looked again at the huge shields and found that they were indeed embedded with small magnetic stones. As for what the Harlan Divine Kingdom had used to assemble the magnetic stones, Zen had no idea. It was true that the 4 divine kingdoms had thought of all sorts of ways to enter the heavenly stellar secret land. "All right, it's getting late. Shields up, let's go. Fiona, Callan, you youngsters have to follow us closely. The difficulty of going past the fast arrow area is far greater than that of going past the slow arrow area," War King Wind warned. The juniors' hearts skipped a beat at these words as they nervously followed behind. A powerful martial artist of the Soul Sea realm was carrying a huge shield as he walked ahead. He held his shield horizontally as he faced the road of saints. 4 powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm were blocking the flanks with huge shields held on their shoulders. 2 more were holding their shields up, facing the sky, while the last one covered the rear. These shields were huge and quite heavy, but since they had occupied the corpses of powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm, it was easy for them to lift the shields up. The craftsmen of the Harlan Kingdom had crafted exquisite buckles at the edges of the huge shields. The powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm only had to lightly touch the edges of the shields for the buckles to merge together. The huge shields thus formed an airtight box that covered over 100 people. War King Wind shouted, "Let's go." Everyone took a synchronized step forward. The 8 powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm also carried their huge shields and maintained the same pace as everyone else. The long, narrow box slowly moved on the road of saints. They were only thrice as fast as an old man walking. When they had walked for more than 100 feet, the sound of countless waves crashing against each other suddenly reached their ears, emanating from the surrounding golden sea. A number of dragon statues emerged from the middle of the sea. These statues had blue arrows in their mouths. War King Wind didn't flinch as he said, "It's coming. Stay alert, grasp your shields firmly." The 8 powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm became serious, and they gripped the huge shields tighter. They had barely taken another step on the road of saints when they heard a cracking sound. Whoosh! An azure light streaked across the sea's surface, leaving a blue ripple in the air as it shot towards the box. Zen blinked at the speed with which the arrow's light was approaching them. The fast arrow area was probably more troublesome than the slow arrow area by a large margin. If the powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm were to be hit by the arrow, a huge hole would be left on their bodies. The blue arrows were most likely coated with dragon arsenic as well. Now that Zen had possessed Brianna's body, he wouldn't be able to escape if he was hit by the arrow. His own body was as strong as a sacred weapon, but Brianna's body wasn't. The arrow that had originally been 1,000 feet away reached them in the blink of an eye and crashed into a giant shield on the left. Boom! Even a single arrow of such power carried an irresistible force under such a high-speed collision. The box formed from the giant shields tilted to the right, only just escaping from slipping into the sea. "Steady with the shields." With a loud shout, War King Wind extended his huge hand and slapped the giant shield to his left, bringing the box back to the road of saints. Chapter 882, Dragon Lineage Archer. Once they had taken over the bodies of the corpses, the mighty warriors of the Soul Sea realm were able to display and use 70% of their original power. But they hadn't expected that the attack from just one sharp arrow could have such terrifying power. Several young warriors became nervous at their contact with the arrow. War King Wind noticed Fiona's and Callan's nervousness. He smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. We've traveled the road of saints quite a few times in the past. There won't be much danger." He had originally wanted to say that the real danger was within the heavenly stellar secret land. But as he watched anxiety ripple through the warriors, he decided against it, not wanting to cause too much panic. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The effect of the first arrow crashing into the shields had barely subsided when 3 arrows came at them from their right. "They are coming from the right. Attention!" War King Wind yelled. The 2 powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm who were holding the shields on the right flank gripped the shields more firmly, bracing for impact. The arrows hit the surface of the shields with a clanging sound and smashed into pieces. Since they had taken careful precaution, the shield box only shook a little before the warriors balanced it back and continued on their path. The arrows in the fast arrow area are hard to dodge, but with these giant shields, it won't be too much of a problem, the Crown Prince of the Wind Divine Kingdom said with a smile. After all, there were so many elders protecting them on this trip. The princes weren't as nervous as they had been moments ago. The whooshing sound of consecutive arrows reached the ears of everyone. As the box formed by the giant shields went further along the road of saints, more and more dragon-shaped sculptures emerged from the sea, and more blue arrows shot out of the waters. These arrows came from all directions. Some appeared out of nowhere and some even came from the dragon-shaped sculptures that raised their dragon heads to shoot the arrows high up into the sky. As a result, the arrows came at them in a downward curve. Fortunately, the 8 giant shields had firmly encased the warriors inside. No matter which way these arrows came from, they could not penetrate the shields. The shower of arrows could do nothing to them. Although the group wasn't progressing at a fast pace, they had managed to traverse 1/3 of the path in about 5 minutes. Arrows kept raining down on the shields. War King Wind was focused on reminding the other Soul Sea Realm Masters to keep their balance and avoid falling into the sea. This road of saints is only 20 miles long. We will be able to cross it in an hour at the current speed we're moving, Turner said to Zen. Zen nodded. He was relaxed as he walked in the middle of the crowd. After all, he didn't need to worry about how to pass through Road of Saints. He wasn't in a hurry. At this moment, a statue slowly rose from the sea 2,000 feet away from Road of Saints. This statue was shaped like a human. It looked like it was carved from white jade, and every part of him seemed lifelike, and the pair of eyes seemed to be made of some kind of precious stone, which was flickering with a scarlet light. What was stranger was that even though he was a statue, his limbs could move nimbly, as if he were alive. The human-shaped statue held a dark golden longbow in his hand and a dozen or so black arrows sat in a quiver on his back. He slowly rose up from the sea, took out a black arrow from his quiver, knocked the arrow on the dark golden longbow, and aimed it at the group. Zen had initially been indifferent as he followed the many powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm in a slow advance. It looked like an easy trip to make to enter the heavenly stellar secret land. And he had somehow thought that Brianna's physical body hadn't been much of use, despite her being at the Spirit Supreme realm. But a chill went through his spine as he beheld the sight before him. It was as if his body had instinctively felt a great sense of crisis. Danger. Zen looked around through the gaps between the shields. Brianna's soul suddenly sounded a message from her world. Idiots. It's the left side, not the right. You guys have alarmed that fellow. That fellow? Who is it? Zen immediately turned his gaze to the right. He narrowed his eyes and discovered that something was amiss. The statues that kept rising and descending in the surroundings were almost all dragon-shaped statues. But there was a person, just one, standing about 2,000 feet away from them. Brianna said flatly, the dragon lineage archer is one of the masterpieces that Master Hendrix Feng was most proud of. His arrows can penetrate these giant shields? Zen asked. Brianna smiled and answered, most likely. Though the magnetic stone is hard, these 8 shields are not completely made of magnetic stone. They are, in fact, made by assembling many small magnetic stones together. I don't think they will be able to resist his arrows. That fellow's arrows, they have a power that's immense and intense. The dragon lineage archer drew his bow as Brianna spoke. As he saw this, Zen shouted to alert his group, everyone, be careful. Pay attention to the right. He had barely finished speaking when the dragon lineage archer released the bowstring. He had released the arrow. The ear-piercing sound of a bowstring vibrating resounded across the group. It created ripples on the surface of the sea, making it resemble the scales of a fish, following which, a ray of black light shot towards them. Not many people could react in such a short period of time. The moment the black light had suddenly shot out, the sound of an explosion rent the air, and the black arrow's speed increased a notch. When the black arrow was about 500 feet away from the box formed by the giant shields, there came another explosive sound. Its speed increased twofold. It has accelerated 3 times in the bowshot. Zen's face hardened. His hands moved as fast as lightning, grabbing Callan and Randy and pushing them away as he shouted, get down. All get down. But however loudly he shouted, his words came out in Brianna's crisp voice. Only a few of the powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm reacted quickly enough. By the time the other Soul Sea realm masters heard the shout and turned, the black light was only 20 or 30 feet away from the giant shields. Boom, boom, 2 muffled sounds could be heard. Everyone had stopped moving forward, astonished. But it wasn't long before they became fearful. 2 small, round holes appeared on the shield box, one on a left shield and the other one on a right shield. This arrow had actually gone straight through the shields. A giant shield was 20 feet long and 10 feet wide. The 8 shields formed an area that wasn't small, but with the 80 to 90 mighty warriors of the Soul Sea realm cramped inside, it definitely wasn't enough. They were all squeezed in together, so there wasn't much space for them to move freely. Once the arrow had pierced through the giant shields, everyone looked around, only to see 4 people standing motionlessly in their places. They all had small holes on their foreheads. It was pretty obvious that the black light had pierced right through their foreheads. The 4 of them were all at the Soul Sea realm and they all had souls of the Fighting Soul realm. But the power of this arrow was too great. It had penetrated their heads and entered their minds, directly shattering their souls. Thump, thump, thump. Once their souls were shattered, the corpses became ownerless and fell to the ground with eerie thumps. Both Callan's and Randy's eyes were filled with great fear. The place that they had stood in a moment ago was where the arrow had pierced through and shattered those souls. If it hadn't been for Zen, who had pulled them aside, that black light would have penetrated their minds and destroyed their souls. What is that? That statue, that human-shaped statue. His arrows can pierce through shields. What should we do? We can't move very fast. We're like a moving target. 4 mighty warriors of the Soul Sea realm had died under this arrow. How could the others not be panicking? The key point was that everyone was bound within the box formed by the giant shields. The space was limited, and there was no room for dodging, unless they abandoned the box. But the problem was that if they abandoned the box, they would have to face the countless arrows out there. And that was something they would definitely not survive. Chapter 883, Life-Saving Moments. Right now, they were stuck in a dilemma. They could neither retreat nor advance. The faces of the 4 emperors were so grave that it seemed as if they had turned to stone. What on earth is that? Zen asked, his eyes narrowed to slits. Turner shook his head. I've never seen anything like this before. War King Wind frowned. That humanoid statue is clever. He knows that we are occupying the corpses, so he aimed his arrow at their heads to kill them. The warriors were all in possession of a corpse each, and right now, they were rather like zombies with souls. If a corpse was shot through, it would only create a hole. It would not cause any fatal damage to the warrior, nor would blood flow out of the body. But if the arrow pierced through the head, the soul itself could shatter to pieces. The arrow could penetrate a shield of magnetic stone. Even the powerful warrior corpses that the 4 rulers possessed could not resist the force of the arrow. Your Majesty, what should we do? Let's go back. Your Majesty, think of a way out of this. Some Soul Sea realm warriors were obviously in a state of panic. On the other hand, Callan and the others, although frightened, didn't say a word. Fiona and the other martial artists of the younger generation knew they didn't have the power to work this out. They could only listen to their fathers and hope that they could figure out a way. But what could the 4 rulers do? War Emperor York, Turner, and Scott all had impatient looks on their faces. They had gone through great pains to obtain the bodies of the 13th floor and had originally planned to fight in the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. However, they hadn't even entered the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land yet when they had encountered this problem. How frustrating it was. At this point, War King Wind's voice rang out. Let's charge. It's our only option. The statue probably can't move. Everyone, let's charge together, with the giant shields. As the king, even if he could not come up with a solution, he had the authority to make a decision on the spot. War King Wind did not know if his guess was correct. It was very possible that more people would die because of his orders, but no matter what decision he made, it was better than standing rooted to the ground and being shot. When the Soul Sea realm masters heard his words, they no longer hesitated. Carrying their shields around them, they began trudging toward the Road of Saints. Surrounded by the shields, they tried to run faster, but it didn't make as much of a difference, even though they were indeed quicker than before. However, just then, one of the Soul Sea realm masters pointed to the sea. Look at him. They turned their heads and saw the human-shaped statue take a leap and move on the sea surface. He is actually following us. He can even move in the sea, a powerful warrior said helplessly. He is drawing his bow. He is drawing his bow. Everyone, be careful. Under everyone's gazes, the humanoid statue took out another black arrow from behind his back and loaded it onto the dark golden longbow before aiming at the warriors once again. Just a moment ago, they had been running with all their might like a team. Now that the humanoid statue was aiming at them again, they began scrambling in all directions, flustered. They pushed and nudged each other in the process. It was havoc. Calm down, you fools, don't be so frantic, War King Wind shouted out. The ruler's rage proved to be useful for they all calmed down a little. Everyone spread out, War King Wind continued. Try to spread out as much as possible. Don't gather in a crowd. It might cause even more deaths. If everyone could spread out a bit, the humanoid statue's arrow would not be able to pierce through so many people at a time. If they stuck together in one place, one arrow might be able to kill 5 or 6 people, perhaps even more. They followed the orders given by War King Wind and started to spread out when another ray of black light shot out from the dark golden bow of the humanoid statue. Whoosh, crack, 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 its speed was only slightly faster than the arrows smeared with dragon arsenic. However, it could explode 3 times in a row in the air, in which case its speed and strength increased 2-fold each time. After the third explosion, the speed and strength of the arrow reached a petrifying level. The black light disappeared quickly in front of everyone's eyes. Soon after, 2 small holes appeared on the giant shields. The warriors exchanged looks before their eyes landed on a Soul Sea Realm warrior on whose forehead could be seen a small hole. With a thump, he fell to the ground. Only one died this time, Turner mumbled. We are still quite far away from the end of the Road of Saints. Even if we were to rush there, we would all most likely die. I'm afraid the result would be the same if we were to retreat. Then what should we do? Only one person had died because of the second arrow, but many of the powerful warriors at the Soul Sea Realm fell into despair. It was not that they were afraid of death. They had endured hardship for many years and were finally about to embark on the ascending path. Still, they hadn't expected to come face to face with such an obstacle. It was understandable for them to panic. Send someone to take care of the statue. War King Wind ordered in a solemn voice. But the Road of Saints is surrounded by the sea. We cannot use life vitality, nor can we fly. A mighty warrior at the Soul Sea Realm replied. As soon as these words fell from his lips, everyone's eyes landed on Zen. They were aware that Zen was the only one in possession of a physical body. He had also used his life vitality to fly before, not to mention that his physical body had the strength of the Spirit Supreme Realm. Right now, they could only count on him to get them through. However, outside of the giant shields, he had to face countless arrows, which made it equally dangerous for him to go out. When Zen noticed everyone looking at him, he blinked, his golden eyes twinkling. He smiled faintly. It seems like I'll have to go and destroy that statue. War King Wind's eyes bored into Zen's. Thad, if you can save us this time, you will be a great benefactor to our 4 divine kingdoms. If in the future... Zen waved his hand casually to stop War King Wind from continuing. We are traveling through the heavenly stellar secret land together, he said indifferently. We're on the same boat. If I save you guys, I would be saved too. Without further ado, open up these giant shields, please. The masters at the Soul Sea Realm gazed at Zen with gratitude. The young man had fought on behalf of Jade Martial House beside the West Dragon River. He had demonstrated his formidable strength. Clearly, he was much stronger than his peers. After entering the Feather Holy Sea, he had played a humongous part. Now, he was the only hope the warriors had left, if they wished to ascend to the upper world. At the moment, besides gratitude, only regret remained in their hearts. 2 Soul Sea Realm masters unbuckled the giant shields. Brianna was so petite a small crack was enough for her to get out. Zen forgot he was in her body. Her chest scraped on the edge of a shield on Zen's way out. Brianna complained. Of course, Zen chose to ignore such complaints. Click. After releasing Zen, the 2 mighty warriors at the Soul Sea Realm instantly buckled up the shields again. The black light was certainly fatal, but the arrows were fatal too. Just as Zen left the protection of the shields, 7 to 8 blue arrows shot toward him. Within moments, they were a few dozen feet away from him. Let's go. Zen's life vitality had already been activated. The speed of a Spirit Supreme Realm warrior was striking. In the blink of an eye, Zen left his original spot and soared high into the sky. Perhaps it was because he didn't rein in his life vitality and strength well enough. With a leap, he rushed to a height of about 5,000 feet. Be careful, if an arrow hits you, it would be a pain to deal with the dragon arsenic. Brianna warned Zen in his inner world. Zen chuckled and nodded. His gaze swept across the golden ocean and locked on the dragon lineage archer. As if sensing the stare, the archer raised his head, his pair of scarlet eyes finding Zen as well. Chapter 884, Combat. This dragon lineage archer was a mere puppet, but he was designed to be the best archer there ever was. The moment the puppet's gaze landed on him, Zen immediately felt shivers run down his spine as if he was a sheep currently being stalked by a deadly wolf. Will you die if he shoots you? Zen asked. It was a given that a Spirit Supreme Realm warrior's body was even stronger than a Soul Sea Realm one, and Zen was curious just how much more resilient the former was compared to the latter. Nonsense, Brianna retorted angrily. His bow is a semi-divine weapon, but his arrows are true divine weapons. How could I possibly block them with my physical body? Arrows of the divine tier. The astonishment was apparent in Zen's face. It was truly evident that the dragon lineage human indeed had an 8th grade sacred place when even a puppet guard wielded a divine weapon. It was no wonder that the black arrow light had been so glaring. That shiver he had felt before now escalated to a full-body chill as an uncomfortable feeling of weariness cooled in his gut. On the surface of the Golden Sea, the dragon lineage archer had already notched a black arrow onto the semi-divine longbow and took aim. Zen's eyes narrowed in contempt and braced himself to charge towards the archer. However, Brianna suddenly spoke in his mind. Are you just going to charge? Using just my life vitality and my body to kill him? Just like that? What else can we do? He told her. A Spirit Supreme Realm warrior's life vitality and physical strength would be enough to crush a Soul Sea Realm warrior. Despite being fierce, the dragon lineage archer would still be nothing compared to Zen's speed. But to activate, hey, Zen did not give her any room to argue and quickly charged towards the archer. Zen's attacking, he just charged towards the statue. I hope he destroys that thing in one go. May the heavens bless us. Stop talking nonsense. If the heavens really did bless us, then what's the point of heavenly tribulations? That statue is taking aim at Zen. I hope he'll miss. All the Soul Sea Realm warriors watched with rapt attention as the agile figure of a young girl flew across the sky and swooped down with incredible speed. Zen's eyes zeroed in on the dragon lineage archer below, who let his arrow loose towards the approaching opponent. Whoosh! The black light shot towards Zen, who suddenly leapt and spiraled into the air. Boom, boom, boom. There were 3 consecutive explosions as the black arrow continued shooting towards Zen at a terrifying speed. It grazed past his ear, and the air current that it carried smacked Zen in the face. Even a Spirit Supreme Realm body felt the pain from the arrow's momentum. Be careful, Brianna snarled. It was still her body after all. My apologies, but your face is too tender, Zen chuckled. At that moment, countless blue arrows intersected his path. These ordinary blue arrows were inferior to the speed Zen flew at. Zen's approach quickly pushed the dragon lineage archer to retreat. Even as a puppet, he was intelligent enough to understand strategy. It was only then that Zen realized that the dragon lineage archer couldn't fly, nor did the archer rely on his life vitality to stand on the water's surface. Stone pillars had been submerged just under the surface of the water that the archer used to jump to and from the area. Zen couldn't help but imagine a dragonfly skimming across the surface of the sea as the puppet jumped onto these pillars to run away from him. But of course, Zen wasn't just about to let him off. Distance was an archer's greatest ally. Now that Zen had gotten too close, the archer was now desperately trying to widen the space between him and his target. Of course, Zen wasn't going to let that happen. Tup, 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 both of them rapidly bounced off the surface of the water. Zen's legs were tense as his body flew horizontally. He focused his life vitality in his hands and watched as it solidified into a thin blade. This life vitality contained the rules of the inner world that existed within Brianna's body. The visualized blade was a provisional measure for Zen to deal with the puppet. Zen was relentless with his chase, and the dragon lineage archer quickly realized that this fellow would truly never quit. Knowing this, the archer suddenly stopped and steadied himself on a stone pillar. He then stomped his foot down and golden waves splattered all around him, disrupting Zen's line of sight. Taking advantage of this, the archer once again drew out an arrow, now planning to shoot Zen at a distance of just 3 feet. Before the golden spray fully settled, Zen had found himself facing the dragon lineage archer head-on. He stared at the black arrow aimed at him with conviction. "Haha, die," the archer spoke, and he was speaking the human language. However, there was no time to dwell on this. The archer suddenly released his grip on the bowstring, and Zen saw how the black beam quickly approached his face. His reaction was quick. Just a slight tilt of his head had been enough for the arrow to brush past his ear and miss him. A faint smile appeared on his face at his successful dodge. I won't die that easily. This black arrow had 3 stages of acceleration. After 3 explosions, it would be enough to kill even a Spirit Supreme Realm warrior. Luckily, it was neither powerful nor fast enough to threaten Zen. Swish! Frustrated at missing his target, the dragon lineage archer brandished his longbow and swung it towards Zen's neck, fully intending to use the bowstring as his blade. Zen quickly reached out and grabbed the bowstring using Brianna's delicate fingers. PFF'd. Although he managed to stop the bowstring from cutting off his head, it still cut his fingers and made blood spurt out from his hand. Hey, can you be more normal? This is still my body. Brianna scolded, thinking that Zen did not value her body at all because it wasn't his. If it weren't for the cyan dragon, she would have definitely pulled his soul into her inner world and ravaged it. However, this was not the case at all. Zen's own physical body was invulnerable to swords and spears, so he got used to dealing with enemies in such a brutal way. He forgot that although Brianna was at the Spirit Supreme realm, her body was still made of flesh and blood. However, he chose to remain deaf from Brianna's nagging. Instead, Zen pulled on the bowstring and released it as fast as lightning. The bowstring bounced back and let out a strange hiss as fish scale-like ripples appeared on the surrounding sea surface. The dragon lineage archer froze in his spot as his scarlet eyes stared intently at Zen. Not much later, a thin line appeared on his neck before his entire head slowly slid off his body. The cut was clean and the puppet seemed to have been made of some sort of soft jade. Just as the head slid down onto a stone pillar, Zen quickly reached out to take the bow and arrows from the puppet's body. He would be crazy to just throw away a semi-divine longbow and a quiver of divine tier arrows into the sea. However, just as he was about to take the valuables, the dragon lineage archer's body suddenly moved. It seemed losing his head did not make him any less agile. The body quickly drew out a black arrow from the quiver and intended to stab Zen in the face. Just as he brandished the arrow, a loud explosion rang throughout the vicinity. The headless puppet's arm quickly went slack and moved no more. Zen, on the other hand, smiled. He lifted his foot and quickly crushed the dragon lineage archer's head beneath him. Chapter 885, Sea Abyss. The puppet wasn't a sentient creature. Obviously, Zen wasn't idiotic enough to think that he would be able to get rid of him just by cutting his neck. However, the maneuver did achieve one thing. Once he crushed the puppet's head with his foot, the headless corpse could no longer move. It stood still on the stone pillar. Then Zen calmly took away his long, dark, golden bow. It stood as high as a person, and there were several lines drawn on it in a bright shade of gold. The aura emanating from it was mysterious and powerful. Zen still didn't know what material the bowstring was made from. Although it was as thin as a human hair, it was still incomparably flexible and remarkably sharp. When Zen merely pinched it lightly, Brianna's finger got cut. This is a semi-divine weapon, but pitifully, it's a bow. Zen had never used a bow as a weapon before, and had no experience with it. But such a long-range weapon could sometimes have miraculous effects. After observing the bow in his hand for a while, Zen reached out and his hands easily extricated the quiver from the back of the puppet. Divine-level arrows. Zen almost shouted out in his ecstatic excitement. Though the arrows didn't have any special abilities, the power that they shot out was extremely terrifying. Not only could they easily kill mighty warriors of the Soul Sea realm, they could also penetrate through giant shields made of magnetic stones. According to what Brianna had said, if her body was hurt, she wouldn't be able to escape either. This meant that Zen had to be careful. Unfortunately, there aren't enough arrows in here. Zen sized up the innards of the quiver. There were only about 8 black-colored arrows in it. Although these black arrows were divine weapons and therefore extremely powerful, they were still for one-time use only, just like the heavenly thunder halberds. Zen only had enough for 8 shots. But something happened the moment his hand touched the quiver. His eyes flashed as he felt the aura of the space law transmit from it. The Sumeru space. Normally, Sumeru space recognized its own master only, but the dragon lineage archer was just a puppet. This meant that removing his mark wasn't the least bit difficult. Zen easily erased the mark from the quiver and then probed it with his own consciousness. Soon after, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face. In the Sumeru space of the quiver, were not 8, nor 80, but hundreds of black arrows. There were not only black arrows, but also arrows in another 2 colors. One of them was entirely red, with a small ghost head embedded in the front, and the other was a shade of dark green, as if it was filled with a strong life force. Zen wondered what these arrows could do. Whoosh! Zen was still investigating inside the quiver when a few more arrows flew towards him, trailing some blue light behind them. However, their aim went south as Zen flashed agilely and returned to his original spot. The 2 arrows with the dragon arsenic that had been shot at him lost their aim and fell into the golden sea. Clearly this was not a place where treasures were to be examined. Once Zen had quickly stored the bow and quiver he had just found into his space ring, he flew up high into the air and once again stepped onto the road of saints. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The dragon lineage archer was already dead, but there were still countless dragon statues which were rising and falling, spitting out blue arrows non-stop in vain at their ever-moving target. Most of these arrows landed on the giant shields, and others went astray, but none of them hit Zen as he dashed forth towards his friends. Open the shields. War King Wind roared an order amongst the chaos. When the other masters saw that Zen had killed the humanoid puppet and returned safe and sound, an expression of great joy appeared on all of their faces. However, Zen waved his hand and remarked in a soft voice, "You guys continue forward. I'll just fly." With the physical body of a spirit supreme realm master, other than the black arrows of the dragon lineage archer, these ordinary blue arrows would not pose any threat to Zen. Thus, he had no need to stay in the narrow and crowded box that the company had made up using their shields. Though the box was enormous, it had gotten crowded inside with so many people. Under the command of War King Wind, the box continued on the road of saints against the rain of arrows. This time, it was moving much faster than before. Zen rose to a greater height, floating and flying in the air. Maintaining himself at this height would allow him to avoid the rain of arrows from the dragon statues. There was another advantage: he could see farther than his companions. The narrow road of saints extended into the distance, and at the end of the road was a huge cave. There was also a very strange sight to behold. When the seawater on both sides reached the end of the road of saints, it would stop flowing and retreat, as if an invisible force was cutting it all off. Not a single drop of the mighty water body entered the cave, so a sort of sea abyss was formed. As the heavenly stellar secret land located in the abyss. As Zen saw this, he exclaimed in his heart. He couldn't figure out just how the dragon lineage human had managed to stop the flow of seawater. Further still, he wasn't sure about the depth of this abyss. And even if he wanted to, he couldn't see the bottom of the abyss even from 10,000 feet above sea level with extremely powerful sight. However, he was in no hurry to learn everything at once. Leisurely floating around in the air, he waited patiently for the small box below him to slowly move ahead and reach the cave. At the same time, he observed carefully if there were any more dragon lineage archers around. Luckily, that didn't seem to be the case. He must have killed the only one. Therefore, the company moved smoothly along the road of saints. When they reached the second half of the road of saints, the number of arrows started to fall down. Farther along the road, it fell exponentially with distance. As they reached the last 1/5 part, the Soul Sea Realm martial artists began to put away their giant shields. Without the threat of arrows, the group began to run wildly down the road of saints. It only took them a few seconds to arrive at the end of the road, and Zen descended down slowly as well when he saw them reach the end. At the end of the road of saints was a fan-shaped platform. Its size was a wonder to behold in itself, and slap bang in the middle of it was a road that was inlaid with a right angle of 90 degrees above the abyss. The seawater flowed all the way to the two sides of the platform and then started flowing downwards at a 90-degree angle. They were standing at the top of a cliff formed by the seawater. "How do we proceed further? Do we jump down from here or what?" Zen asked. War King Wind replied with an amused smile, "Just follow me." After he finished speaking, he started walking towards the edge of the platform. At the edge of the platform was a bottomless abyss and there was no way around it. Since War King Wind had occupied a corpse, he was unable to use his life vitality to fly. This meant that with his next step, he would definitely fall into the abyss. However, he confidently took that step. The moment he moved forwards, a strange sight greeted their eyes. Instead of falling down, War King Wind somehow stood horizontally on the vertical road. The entire gravity around him seemed to have shifted its base. From Zen's angle, he seemed to have suction pads on his feet since he was easily standing horizontally below him, his feet adhering to the surface of the road. The other powerful warriors of the Soul Sea Realm also took a step forward. Everyone changed his or her angle and stood on the road perpendicular to the earth below them. Seeing this scene, Zen also took a step. When he walked towards the abyss, he suddenly felt a drastic change in the gravity around him. Like everyone else around him, he did not fall into the abyss, but instead stood on the vertical road. From Zen's current angle, it was as if he was standing on the entrance to a giant, round cave. Along with the road underneath his feet, golden seawater was also flowing slowly above his head, entering the cave from his left and right. The dragon lineage humans were extremely smart. They managed to somehow change the gravity of the world and establish their core sacred place here. Zen couldn't help but sigh. No wonder the seawater was down here. Since the gravity and its direction were completely changed now, the direction in which the seawater would flow accordingly changed too. When Turner heard Zen's sigh, he smiled and told him, "The heavenly stellar secret land has many miraculous things, but it also has numerous dangerous places, so we have to be careful. Especially after arriving at the heavenly stellar sacred place, we have to obey the orders. Do not act rashly." Zen nodded as he looked into the distance. The road under his feet once again extended outwards and they saw a huge city in front of them. Was this their first glimpse of the heavenly stellar sacred place? The 8th grade sacred place of the dragon lineage human was called the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place. After their fall, their sacred place had become a secret land for the 4 divine kingdoms to explore. There was no danger in front of them right now. Along with many other Soul Sea Realm martial artists, Zen and the others followed the road under their feet and proceeded towards the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place. The road was only 50 to 60 miles long. After rushing forwards for less than 5 minutes, they arrived in front of the sacred place. At the end of the road was an arched gate made up of a dragon statue. After passing through this arched gate, they would enter the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. However, the dragon carving on top of the gate had a bewitching red look in its eyes as it stared at the crowd. It seemed that it wouldn't be easy to pass through this gate. Chapter 886, The Sealed Sacred Place. Zen gazed at the arched door of the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land in silence. Without a doubt, there were hidden mysteries on the other side of the arched door. It was not easy to pass through it. However, it was not the first time that the 4 rulers had explored the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. They certainly must have methods to deal with it. At this moment, Turner and War King Wind stepped forward. They did not barge through the arched door immediately, instead, they walked over to the sides. The 2 of them took out 2 red dragon-shaped keys from their space rings and inserted them into the small holes on either end of the arched door. Nodding to each other, they turned the key at the same time. Crack! The jarring sound of shifting gears sounded, and Turner and War King Wind retreated at the same time. They saw the huge arched door slowly begin to rotate. The dragon-shaped door spun 3 times. The red light reflecting in the eyes of the dragon sculpture at the top of the door extinguished quietly. Following this, a jade-green light rose in its eyes and a transmission door appeared in the center of the arc. Seeing the sudden appearance of the door, Zen was slightly stunned. A clouded expression entered his eyes. The Heavenly Stellar Secret Land was located right behind the transmission door. Why did they have to go through this door to reach there? Wasn't that unnecessary? Turner noticed Zen's surprised gaze and said, "The Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place that you see is just an illusion. There are dangers aplenty inside. If you were to enter through it, only death would await you. In the past, many people from the 4 divine kingdoms have been fooled by the illusion, and a lot of them have died." Illusion, Zen muttered to himself. The beautiful and lifelike city before him was an illusion. Zen was a little surprised at this revelation. It had obviously been created in order to mislead the invaders. If they had entered this illusion without knowing about it, they would only have had a slim chance of surviving. Only through this transmission door can we enter the real Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. It has been opened now. Let's go inside. Without wasting any more time, the powerful masters of the Soul Sea Realm entered the transmission door in succession. Zen nodded and followed the others through the door. After a short period of space transmission, an azure-colored city appeared in Zen's field of vision. The entire city looked as if it had been carved out of crystal. The edges of both the giant and smaller buildings reflected a jade-blue crystal light. The city looked as if it had been pulled right out of a fairyland from someone's dream. Everything seemed unreal. "It's so beautiful," Fiona couldn't help but cry out in praise as the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place revealed itself before her eyes. Beside her, Randy nodded. "It is indeed beautiful. I'm more than willing to believe that this city is an illusion, not the one that we just saw." Pausing at the gates of the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place for a while to marvel at the view, they walked ahead along the main road of the city. The 7 divine kingdoms in the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place had been established almost at the same time centuries ago. In the beginning, the dragon lineage humans and the human race did not have anything to do with each other. The 2 races did not even know of each other's existence. However, as the number of powerful warriors in the divine kingdoms and the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place increased, the warriors of the dragon lineage human began to expand their territory and population beyond the Feather Holy Sea. As for the 7 divine kingdoms, martial artists, they too began to explore the Feather Holy Sea. It was at this time that the 2 races first made contact. At the start, when the human race had just reached out to the dragon lineage humans, they had been friendly, but this peaceful state lasted less than 10 years. The racial barriers soon made them turn against each other. What happened next was a war that spanned across tens of thousands of years. During the war, the strength of the 7 divine kingdoms and dragon lineage human rose rapidly. Even though the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place had been fighting the 7 divine kingdoms all alone, they were not at a disadvantage. On the contrary, the 7 divine kingdoms had always lost out against the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place. Perhaps the most important reason for that was the Dragon Soar Arena that the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place had been in possession of. Almost all dragon lineage human tribes in the lower world had their own Dragon Soar arenas. It was known that only powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm could enter the ascending passageway and rise to the upper world. If they had access to the Dragon Soar arena, it would have been a different case. Through the arena, all of them could freely send warriors of the younger generation to the upper world to practice and learn their craft. Long ago, Zen had made a trip to the upper world through the Dragon Soar arena. After returning to the lower world, he fought the talents in the central region and always emerged the victor. The arena had been of great help to him. Because of their advantage of the Dragon Soar arena, the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place had developed a lot more rapidly than the 7 Divine Kingdoms. By the time the 7 Divine Kingdoms had come to possess quasi-7th grade power, the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place had already become an 8th grade sacred place. With the fast speed at which the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place developed, it was only a matter of time before the entire Divine Kingdom continent was annexed by them. Later, with the help of the secret sect, the human race of the upper world opened up the reverse spirit channel and often came to the aid of the 7 Divine Kingdoms. The 7 Divine Kingdoms, which had the reverse spirit channel on their side, finally had the confidence to wage a decisive war against the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place. Thus, the Grand War went on in full operation. The battle was known in the history of the 7 Divine Kingdoms as the Dragon Lineage Human Massacre. It lasted for more than 100 years, and in the end, 3 of the 7 Divine Kingdoms had been annihilated. The Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place used the lives in their sacred land to seal the Feather Holy Sea in a blood sacrifice. There were also countless treasures hidden and left behind in the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place after the war. To obtain them, the 4 Divine Kingdoms had explored the place for a number of years, and innumerable people had died within the Feather Holy Sea. After numerous trials, they had finally managed to access the other 3 secret lands and find a way to enter the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place. After obtaining the inheritance of the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place, the 4 Divine Kingdoms grew rapidly. However, during the Dragon Lineage Human Massacre, the ascending passageway was destroyed and no one in this great world could ascend to the upper world anymore. Many powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm were thus trapped in the lower world. So it was natural that some of the powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm were always morose every time someone mentioned their circumstance. They would rather that the Dragon Lineage Human Massacre had never happened, and that they had never inherited anything from the Dragon Lineage Human. Now, their only hope was that the ascending passage had not been destroyed. After all, what did they gain from the many treasures of the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land? In the end, they were stuck at the Soul Sea realm. When their lifespans ran out, they would eventually die and turn to ashes. Soaring to the upper world was absolutely out of the question. This was the past of the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place. Now, everything here seemed to have frozen over time. The windows were still open and the doors unlocked. A few flying chariots were scattered over the roofs of houses. Back in the age, Dragon Lineage Human preferred death over dishonor and practiced blood sacrifice using billions of lives of the race. The vast majority of the clansmen had not known about this decision. When the blood sacrifice began, the clansmen turned into clouds of bloody mist within seconds. Not even a bone was left behind. The blood mist gradually became the golden spell of blood sacrifice and spread all over the Feather Holy Sea. Afterward, the entire place was sealed up under the spell for a number of years until the 4 Divine Kingdoms explored the sites and entered the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. Clop clop. 80 to 90 martial artists in the 4 Divine Kingdoms had entered the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place this time. With such a large group walking into the empty city, they could all hear the echo of their footsteps. The sound made several youngsters especially vigilant. Seeing Fiona, Callan and a few others so nervous, War King Wind laughed. "Children, don't be afraid. The danger of Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place cannot be found here. This is just an empty city. We've been here so many times before, but we've never encountered another living being." Indeed, because of the spell of the blood sacrifice, there were no living creatures anymore in the Feather Holy Sea. All the way through the sea and the 3 secret lands, Zen had only discovered one person who could be considered sort of alive, and that was Brianna's body, which he had occupied. However, because Brianna's soul had been locked up, it had separated from her body. In a sense, she was like the living dead, a zombie. Okay, Fiona smiled and nodded. The empty sacred land made her feel cautious and she did not know why. She could not help but feel jittery. However, the very next second, she heard the sound of rustling, like a wild beast was chewing on some bones. Crack, crack, huh. Hearing the strange sound, Fiona stiffened. She immediately stopped in her tracks, her gaze sweeping over her surroundings. But the sound soon stopped. Chapter 887, The Dragon-Shaped Monster. Fiona was puzzled. She believed her father when he said that the heavenly stellar sacred place might be an empty city, and there might not be anything else. But she wondered why her blood had pounded through her as she entered the heavenly stellar sacred place, as if an invisible force had begun to put pressure on her. "What's wrong, Fiona?" War King Wind asked, concerned. He had tried comforting his daughter, but Fiona didn't seem to be convinced or relieved. Instead, she looked even more nervous. Fiona's brown eyes were worried as she said, "I just heard a sound." "Fiona, don't be too nervous." Callan also tried to console her. Fiona pursed her lips. She was afraid, but it probably wouldn't be dangerous if her father and the Soul Sea Realm Masters stayed with her. So she nodded and continued to follow them. But her nervousness didn't go away. Zen walked up to Fiona and looked at her, frowning slightly at her nervous expression. There were people in this world who had special senses. Perhaps she really could sense something strange, seeing as she was a phoenix descendant. Fiona had hardly walked 80 feet when her body suddenly stiffened. Crack, 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 the sound of bones being gnawed rang out again. Fiona suddenly turned her head while controlling the corpse to keep walking. She looked to the street nearby and came to a stop, as if she had suddenly become glued to the ground. Fiona, War King Wind frowned at his daughter's behavior. Fiona had always been a clever, obedient girl. Sure, she was naive, but as a warrior, she was definitely not timid. If she were a coward, she wouldn't have wanted to challenge Zen, who had defeated Logan before. Many Soul Sea Realm Masters looked at Fiona suspiciously. No one knew what she was up to. Crack, 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 a clear voice rang out. In this spacious, sacred place, it sounded like a wild beast gnawing on bones. Such a sound belonged to a forest. But they were in the heavenly stellar sacred place right now, and there weren't any living creatures in the Feather Holy Sea. Everyone agreed on this. There were a few warriors who argued that there might be some living creatures hiding in the heavenly stellar secret land, but most other warriors didn't think so. After all, the Feather Holy Sea was protected by the power of the blood sacrifice. So how could any living creature survive in such a place? There, Fiona's eyes flashed strangely and she said, "I can feel it. I can feel its presence." No one questioned Fiona now that everyone had heard the voice. Someone asked, "What is it?" To everyone's surprise, Fiona began trembling. Her red lips suddenly paled. "It is my nemesis, the nemesis of my life," she said, her voice shaky. This shocked the Soul Sea Realm Masters. The nemesis. What nemesis did humans have? Humans had many enemies in the upper world, but no race had been able to stop the expansion of the human race. Although there were millions of races in the 100,000 supreme worlds in the upper world, each of them had their own unique characteristics. There were some strong races among them, like the demon knight and the ogre. But the human race had expanded the fastest. So far, they had occupied nearly 10,000 supreme worlds and they were practically invincible. Then what was the nemesis that Fiona was talking about? Zen's eyes flashed as Brianna's perception came from the inner world. This woman has the bloodline of the genuine phoenix, right? Yes, Zen said. It was not a big deal for Brianna to figure out that Fiona was a descendant of the genuine phoenix. Brianna said, "Dragons have competed with phoenixes since time immemorial. As two supreme legendary beasts in the universe, the genuine dragon and the genuine phoenix have fought for countless eras. If she feels a nemesis close by, she might be sensing the existence of a genuine dragon." Genuine dragon? Zen frowned. Even though the souls of 9 genuine dragons existed in his mind, he had never seen a genuine dragon. But why would a genuine dragon appear in such a small world? If it was an adult genuine dragon, its body would be tens of thousands of miles long. How could there be a genuine dragon in the heavenly stellar secret land? Brianna answered his unasked question, "Perhaps the ancestral dragon egg has hatched, but this ancestral dragon. But that shouldn't be the case." Suspicion crept up her voice. She was just speculating, and her speculations seemed to contradict each other. As everyone looked around in confusion, War King Wind asked, "Fiona, your nemesis. What nemesis do you have?" Fiona shook her head. Her body continued to tremble as if she were in a world of ice and snow. I don't know. I only have a vague feeling that is very terrifying." Zen walked up to Fiona, stared at her, his golden eyes boring into hers, and asked, "Is it a dragon?" Fiona's eyes flashed with fear at Zen's words. Before this, she had only had a vague sense of this kind of fear. Now Zen's words, like a candle lit in the darkness, caused her perception to become clear. "Yes, it's a dragon. A most extraordinary one. Ancestral dragon. Could it be that the ancestral dragon egg has already hatched? We might be in trouble. I've heard that the ancestral dragon egg is impossible to hatch. But it's weird if it has hatched. Why would it hatch now? We'd better go back right now. If the ancestral dragon appears in this world, I'm afraid the whole great world will collapse. The Soul Sea Realm Masters began to speculate at Fiona's words. Their goal was to obtain the ancestral dragon egg. But they had just wanted to take the egg away, not a living dragon. This ancestral dragon most likely concerned the entirety of the genuine dragon race. They knew that it might be quite strong even if it had just hatched. So how could they resist it after all? The Soul Sea Realm Masters were about to retreat when a voice suddenly sounded again. A clattering sound could be heard. The sound was extremely clear, coming from the street running parallel to the crowd. Soon, everyone saw a black mass appear at the corner of the street. As they looked over, they saw a tiny black dragon-shaped monster chewing on a snow-white bone. It wasn't big and had a dragon head on a short body, looking like a small dragon. But it had a pair of long, snow-white fangs on either side of its mouth. Is it a dragon? This isn't a dragon, right? How can a dragon look like this? Even if it's a dragon, there's nothing to be afraid of. The voice had shocked everyone, but the appearance of the small, dragon-shaped monster filled them with relief. Everyone had occupied a corpse, but their perceptions still came from their souls. Just with one glance, they could tell that this little thing wasn't strong or powerful. Fiona, are you afraid of this little thing? I can go and capture it for you. A Soul Sea Realm Master of the Wind Divine Kingdom said, controlling his corpse as he rushed towards the little monster. Zen shouted for the master to stop. Don't go there. But the Soul Sea Realm Master was too fast. In an instant, he was close enough that stretching his hand would help him catch the dragon-shaped monster. The dragon-shaped monster suddenly raised its head and opened its mouth, a mouth that was completely out of proportion to its body. It roared at the Soul Sea Realm Master. Its voice was extremely loud, completely at odds with its small body. The sound wave it let out forced everyone to cover their ears. They watched in horror as the upper half of the corpse that the Soul Sea Realm Master had occupied disintegrated into powder. What was more, even half the house that was behind the Soul Sea Realm Master also collapsed the same way as the Master. Chapter 888, Escape. With a whooshing sound, the blue crystal-like structure turned into dust and scattered into the air. Everyone was stunned. The dragon-shaped monster hadn't appeared to be dangerous. Perhaps it could only be considered a second-level or third-level fierce beast. But it had completely destroyed the corpse occupied by the Soul Sea Realm Master with a single roar. What on earth was it? The soul of the Soul Sea Realm Master had been within the corpse's mind. Since the entire upper body was now shattered, his soul was probably destroyed as well. Grab that thing, I'm going to take revenge for Nigel. One of the Soul Sea Realm Masters was enraged and rushed towards the dragon-shaped monster. Be careful, this little thing is a little strange. Stay out of way of its roar. The dragon-shaped monster's roar was powerful, and had even killed a Soul Sea Realm Master. But most of the warriors present were at the Soul Sea Realm. For them, the roar was loud and amazing, but not that scary. So no one tried to escape from the spot. But just as the Soul Sea Realm Master came up in front of the dragon-shaped monster, he skidded on the ground and turned around, rushing back. Let's go. Run, the Soul Sea Realm Master shouted to the crowd. Everyone looked doubtfully at the master, but their questions were answered when they saw hundreds of dragon-shaped monsters suddenly appear in the alley by the side of the street. It was not difficult to deal with this little thing. It was deadly dangerous, but subduing it wasn't a difficult task. But hundreds of dragon-shaped monsters. Now, that was terrifying. The stunned looks on everyone's faces instantly morphed into fear, after which War King Wind ordered, everyone, run. But even before he had finished speaking, he noticed that everyone had already run away, with Zen leading the retreating pack. They were just about to turn into the main road when they heard numerous dragon roars. Dozens of sound waves drifted up from the alley nearby and shattered the 10 crystal buildings into pieces. The dragon-shaped monsters' roars were too powerful. It didn't take long for the dragon-shaped monsters to reach the main road, chasing after the warriors. Each of the dragon-shaped monsters held their breath, as if they wanted to emit the deadly sound waves again. Split up. Don't stay here. Split up in 2 directions and gather at the Jade Lake. The moment the order had left War King Wind's mouth, the group of Soul Sea Realm Masters split into 2 and rushed into 2 different streets. Growl. As soon as they entered the streets, dozens of sound waves attacked them from different directions. The sound waves that were released into the sky did not have any effect, and some sound waves that were at the lower altitude caused a crack to appear on the surface of the road. As for the surrounding exquisite buildings, they were no match for the power of these sound waves and fell one after the other. Whoosh! Zen frowned and jumped up, landing on the roof of a building and watching the little beasts constantly jumping in excitement. Brianna, what are these things? He asked. This trip to the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land was turning out to be quite unusual. When Zen had entered the Feather Emperor's secret land, the difficulty of passing through the slow arrow area had been greater than the previous years. Now that these strange monsters had appeared, he felt even more curious and confused. Zen wasn't exactly clear about Brianna's identity, but he was certain of one thing. She was a dragon lineage human, meaning that she might know about these things. Brianna, who was floating in the interior world, shook her head and replied, "These little monsters seem to have the blood of the genuine dragon, but their blood is not pure. I'm unable to determine what they exactly are." Zen, who was standing on the roof of the building, realized that he had attracted the attention of a dragon-shaped monster. It flapped its narrow wings and flew along the eaves of the building. It then jumped and lunged towards Zen, opening its large mouth. It let out an almighty roar, and an invisible sound wave attacked Zen without warning. Zen's golden eyes flashed. He dodged the sound wave with a blast of air. He appeared behind the dragon-shaped monster and struck it with a swift and fierce elbow strike. Whoosh! Zen's attack sent the body of the dragon-shaped monster flying backwards. Since the physical body that Zen occupied was at the Spirit Supreme realm, its strength was extremely terrifying. It was probably equal to the strength of Zen's 4,000 dragon scales. The monster flew 10,000 feet into the sky before slowly falling down. Bam! The dragon-shaped monster smashed into the ground. Zen's gaze was fixed on the little thing. Logically speaking, his elbow should have directly crushed it, but not only did it not shatter, it even flipped over after falling on the ground, getting back to its feet again. It was as if it was unharmed. How is this possible? Theoretically speaking, if Zen's sacred weapon body ever suffered a heavy blow from Brianna's physical one, the attack wouldn't actually kill him, but he probably wouldn't be able to stand up for a while. The Soul Sea Realm Masters, however, might die after taking such a blow. After all, they were not as powerful as the warriors at the Spirit Supreme Realm. And the gap between the Spirit Supreme Realm warriors and the Soul Sea Realm warriors was very large. Let's go. Zen saw about 8 dragon-shaped monsters heading straight for him. His body suddenly moved and flew forward. It was much easier for Zen to escape than the others. After all, he occupied a physical body which was at the Spirit Supreme Realm. The others only occupied the corpses that had been dead for many years, which meant that they couldn't fly and could only rely on the corpses to run on the ground. Roar, roar, roar. Under the power of these roars, the houses on all sides started to collapse. Miserable shrieks could be heard from time to time. Quite a few warriors had probably been killed by the dragon-shaped monsters' roars. Help! As Zen was flying through the air, he heard Callan scream. He was being chased by 2 dragon-shaped monsters and it looked like there was no escape for him. Get away! Such annoying monsters! Buzz! Buzz! War King Wind roared as his 2 golden axes flew out. He had occupied Federico's corpse and its power was extremely terrifying. In his fury, he had thrown the giant golden axes with an impressive power that could even split a mountain. Bang! Bang! The giant axes flew at a speed that didn't allow the dragon-shaped monsters to dodge them. The huge force of the axes colliding into the monsters caused them to smash into a building behind them. Boom! The building collapsed under the impact of the 2 axes and the monsters. Let's go! War King Wind carried Callan and sprinted forward, fast enough that he didn't see that the 2 monsters had crawled right back out of the ruins of the building. When it came to speed or strength, these dragon-shaped monsters weren't superior. But their physical bodies were terrifyingly tough. Even a young genuine dragon could not have such a strong physical body. Everyone was completely helpless as they faced the dragon-shaped monsters. All they could do was to run away. Dozens of Soul Sea Realm Masters were running fast in the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place, avoiding the attacks of the dragon-shaped monsters. It was fortunate for them that the little monsters didn't move fast. As the crowd ran madly, they managed to escape the pursuit of the little monsters. They had, very quickly, passed through half of the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place, and soon arrived at the center of the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place, gathering at the Jade Lake. Everyone was fearful and uneasy. Some of them, especially War King Wind, had entered the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place so many times, so they knew clearly which place was safe and which was dangerous. It was impossible for living creatures to exist in the main city of the Heavenly Stellar Sacred Place. Even the most troublesome puppets did not exist here. But now that these dragon-shaped monsters had appeared out of nowhere, it was beginning to look like a bad omen. Fiona stood at the edge of the Jade Lake, her face still pale. When War King Wind saw his daughter's expression, he felt sorry for her and tried to console her. Fiona, those little things are powerful but they're not that scary. Zen appeared with a dragon-shaped monster in his hand. He had just flown around and caught one of the dragon-shaped monsters in his hand. Everyone looked at the dragon-shaped monster warily. But Zen had already sealed its mouth, so it could not pose a great threat. Look, that has caught one with his bare hands. There's nothing to be afraid of, War King Wind said with a smile. But Fiona stared at Zen dazedly and said, no, that's not what I'm afraid of. Chapter 889, The Three. Since she entered the heavenly stellar sacred place, Fiona had been acting strange. While the strange dragon-shaped monsters were indeed troublesome to deal with, they weren't particularly deadly to the many powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm. After all, they were only cubs. They weren't a threat so long as the warriors were careful enough to not be besieged. With a glance at Fiona, Zen grabbed the dragon-shaped beast and said, I guess this is not what Fiona is afraid of. This is merely a cub. Yes, I think so too. A Soul Sea realm warrior nodded with a solemn face. While it was dragon-like, the thing wasn't quite a dragon yet. The very shape of the young beast was already terrifying. What would happen when it grew up later on? But even though this monster was still a cub, there could be a mother beast lurking around. Could their mother be in the heavenly stellar secret land? This conclusion wasn't too difficult to come to. Most of the powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm could easily figure it out. The most important question, however, was what kind of mother beast gave birth to these dragon-shaped monsters? And what level of strength did it possess? Would the crowd be able to resist it? The thought made the emperors frown. How about having this year's heavenly stellar secret land exploration end here? There will still be a great number of opportunities in the future, Scott suggested. In truth, what he wanted to say was that since the ascending passage would be opened because of Zen, sooner or later, everyone would be able to ascend to the upper world. There was no need to risk their lives in the heavenly stellar secret land. The four emperors along with the Soul Sea realm warriors of the four divine kingdoms had worked themselves to the bone, all for the benefits of the reverse spirit channel. If they could ascend to the upper world, they would obtain endless resources. They wouldn't have to fight over the ancestral dragon egg any longer. But if Derek asks, how will we account for it? One of the Soul Sea realm experts asked cautiously. HMPH, why didn't he just enter the heavenly stellar secret land himself? He's stronger than us, so he's just bullying us because we're still unable to ascend to the upper world. He's just using trash from up there to trick us into working for him. Another Sea Soul realm powerhouse exclaimed angrily. Although the four divine kingdoms listened to the secret sect, they were absolutely not its submissive subjects. Each of them planned for their own future. They had already stepped into the Soul Sea realm. Once Zen's information was relayed and the passage was repaired, they only had to wait for the day to ascend. And as for the ancestral dragon egg, it was indeed good stuff, but what did it have to do with them? Seeing that everyone maintained the same kind of attitude, War King Wind was also interested. After some pondering, he decided, okay, if that's the case, when Derek asks, let's tell him that we failed. This sacred place has already changed so much. For safety's sake, we should go back. With that, a positive response resounded from the other Soul Sea realm warriors. Everyone's life was valuable. While they could perhaps obtain some lucky chance and benefit from the heavenly stellar secret land, compared to their own lives, it wasn't that important. However, just as they were to retreat, the ground began to tremble. Boom! It was as if a huge beast was beating the ground. What was that? War Emperor York was an extremely cautious person. His face turned gloomy. Rumble. The tremor continued like a strong earthquake. All the buildings in the heavenly stellar secret land began to rise and fall, collapsing piece by piece. Go. No matter what it is, it's definitely not something good. And it has nothing to do with us. After shouting, Turner took the lead to run back. Everyone felt a tinge of regret. They should have left when they encountered that puppet archer. For all the years they spent exploring the heavenly stellar secret land, they hadn't yet obtained the ancestral dragon egg. They were all well aware of the many dangers in this sacred place. For the past 10 years, not a single person had died in the heavenly stellar secret land and they grew too complacent. Now, it was no easy task to retreat. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The warriors at the Soul Sea realm turned into streams of light and started running back. As for the small dragon-shaped monsters they found on the way back, they couldn't care less about them now. While Zen had come for the ancestral dragon egg as well, there was a difference in the essence of his purpose. Although Zen wanted to obtain the ancestral dragon egg because of the Cyan dragon, this group of Soul Sea realm experts were all too ready to retreat. This was bad. But at this moment, a black blade light suddenly appeared from the building before them. Swoosh! It then spread out at lightning speed. PFF'd. In an instant, the corpse of one of the Soul Sea Realm experts was cut into two pieces before his soul was separated from his mind to float away in the air. Witnessing the scene, some of the warriors behind him jumped in surprise, while others fell to the ground to avoid the blade light. Fear filled them all. Who is it? War King Wind sensed life vitality emitting from the light. It was clear that their opponent was neither a fierce beast nor a puppet. To their right was an exquisite-looking tower with a stable foundation. Even after the earthquake, it remained standing. Creak. The door to the second floor of the tower opened abruptly. A young man, clad in black, walked out. He had long hair, a thick beard, and a lazy look on his face. In his hand, he held a black saber. Huh, strange. Why is there a group of corpses running around here? The young man sniffed something for a moment. It doesn't smell like zombies. Some people seem to have abandoned their own bodies and occupied the corpses of the dragon lineage human. This is weird. Dorothea, what's going on? As soon as he asked the question, another person stepped out of the ruins. A beautiful, silver-haired woman stood in front of them. The only twist to her beauty was in her right eye. A pale, pink flower grew there, its root deeply embedded in her eye socket. It was a terrifying trait. HMPH, it's simple. These folks couldn't even resist the power of blood sacrifice, but they managed to come up with such a method. They used soul cores to control the corpses of the dragon lineage human and snuck into the heavenly stellar secret land. They should be natives of this great world, the silver-haired woman responded indifferently. Afterward, a tall and sturdy man walked over along the street, carrying a fiery red sickle on his shoulder. While the burly man walked toward War King Wind and the others, he remarked, "Seems like we're lucky. We're lacking in bait to lure that thing out. But since these live souls are in corpses, the bodies are perfect for bait." It seemed as though the three of them weren't taking the warriors seriously at all. Scott, War King Wind, and Turner were all utterly offended. "Friend, what do you mean?" War King Wind asked coldly. With a sinister smile, the silver-haired woman asked, "Who is your friend? Weren't we clear? We're capturing the evil dragon. We want to borrow your corpses and your souls." "How conceited, to keep so many of us here. As if you could." "Humph," War Emperor York scoffed. Although the Soul Sea Realm warriors couldn't use their full strength due to the occupation of the corpses, they were still at the Soul Sea Realm. They wouldn't submit to defeat so easily. "Ha, conceited. No one has mentioned that." The silver-haired woman laughed in amusement. As the burly man walked to the other side, carrying the giant sickle, it seemed as though he paid no mind to Zen's group. Faintly, he said, "Dorothea, capture them. Max can't wait any longer." With a slight nod, the silver-haired woman revealed an enchanting smile. And then, the flower in her right eye began to spin. Chapter 890, Zero Homers. Across the great world, many powerful warriors at the Soul Sea Realm were on top of almost everyone. Since when had they ever been looked down upon like this? Even though these people seemed to have unfathomable strengths, many of the powerful Soul Sea Realm warriors looked indignant. However, the other side showed no interest in messing around with them. The flower in Dorothea's eyes slightly rotated before she said in an aloof tone, "They are using the soul cores to control the corpses. As long as I disturb the power of the soul cores, their souls can all be imprisoned inside the corpses forever. It must be Max's great luck that the god has sent them to us. They can be our baits. Haha, Max's luck truly never fails." When her soft laughter had died down, a wispy pink mist floated out from the flower. Power of fragrance. Spiritual confinement. Who? A faint fragrance quickly wafted out from her and trapped many of the powerful Soul Sea Realm warriors inside. At that moment, everyone suddenly realized that they couldn't move the corpses anymore. The soul core stopped working. How is this possible? The power of the soul cores must have been disturbed by that jerk. I can't leave the mind of this corpse now. Those powerful Soul Sea Realm masters had used the power of the soul cores to make the corpses move. Alas, Dorothea seemed to have easily disrupted the power of the soul cores. This meant that she could easily cut off the connection between the souls of these powerful Soul Sea Realm warriors and the corpses they occupied. But they had yet to realize the worst thing that happened. They previously thought that they could just abandon the corpses and leave, but some of the Soul Sea Realm masters tried doing so, and found that their souls were firmly locked inside the corpses' heads, with no ways to escape. "Stop trying, it's useless. A small group of souls at the Fighting Soul Realm won't be able to break free from my spiritual confinement," Dorothea said indifferently, as she seemed to have sensed the Soul Sea Realm master's movements. At that point, even Zen couldn't move. Although he had occupied Brianna's body, which wasn't dead, he had still used the soul core to control the body. The soul sealing spell had made it impossible for anyone to forcefully control Brianna's body, so Zen had no choice but to temporarily control her body with the soul core. Now, everyone turn around. Dorothea smiled and walked past them, as all the corpses turned around simultaneously. Now, everyone was under her control. Why is there a living body? Zen caught Dorothea's attention amidst the crowd of corpses, and she immediately walked towards him. And this body is at the Spirit Supreme realm, but it's also actually controlled by the soul core. How strange. She sized Zen up and confusion clouded her irises. Of course, she didn't know that Brianna's soul was locked by the soul sealing spell, and Zen had taken over her body. However, she is so beautiful. A strange glow flashed in Dorothea's eyes. Then, she suddenly leaned over and kissed Zen on the cheek. If I don't need this body later, I will keep you, she said with a smile. Zen felt nothing towards the kiss, but within the body, Brianna felt goosebumps prickle all over her skin. That's so gross. Zen, I'll kill her for that. In the world within Brianna's body, her thunderous roar together with the crack of thunder and lightning were heard. Brianna's soul was extremely powerful, and Dorothea's actions disgusted her so much that she reacted quite angrily. I can't even move right now and I can't even protect myself. How can I kill her? Zen said helplessly. No one would have thought that a bunch of creatures had suddenly appeared in the heavenly stellar secret land. Those dragon-shaped monsters first showed up, then they met these three mysterious masters. What had happened in the heavenly stellar secret land? Were these people here for the ancestral dragon egg as well? Who exactly are they? Do you know them? Zen asked. A cold snort passed from Brianna's lips. They are from the celestial position. And they are the hunters of the celestial position. Brianna whined. Celestial position. Zen's eyes lit up. This wasn't the first time he had heard about it. The Tower of Sin in the Sea God continent belonged to the celestial position. He had passed the test in the talent tablet and was even recognized by the celestial position back then. However, Zen still didn't know what the celestial position was until now, and what abilities they had. What exactly is the celestial position? Zen asked again. You're really curious, Brianna said. Then she added, although I don't know what they'll feed us to, it's definitely not a good thing. You don't seem to care about this. Didn't that woman say that she'll spare you? Zen smiled. I would rather die than fall into her hands. Brianna said angrily. Her eyes cast Zen an incredulous look, as if she couldn't believe he even said that. The celestial position is a group of mavericks. They are also a group of idiots. Brianna continued. Idiots. This left Zen confused. Why, the members of the celestial position are also known as the Zero Homers. Strictly speaking, the celestial position isn't a race, but a group of super talents from various races who gathered together and formed a group. The world calls them Zero Homers because they've always been planning to reset the entire universe. Brianna said flatly. Curiosity was written all over Zen's face. What do you mean by reset the entire universe? Destroy the heaven and stop the cycle of reincarnation. Brianna quickly answered. It was known that the heaven was in constant cycles of reincarnation. One cycle took 3.6 billion years, which was also equivalent to an era of the universe. Many powerful creatures in the universe wanted to destroy the heaven. At the end of each era, a great new world would begin. Thus, it would be a world of chaos for the rule of the heaven. If the heaven was destroyed, then the era would come to an end. A new heaven would be formed, and all the entire universe's inferior laws, middle-level laws, and superior laws would be reconstructed. Older civilizations in the entire universe had undergone the countless cycles of reincarnation, from the endless round of birth and death to shape new ones. However, the celestial position was quite strange. Their goal was not only to destroy the heaven, but also to stop the cycle of reincarnation and put it to an end. If they end the cycle of reincarnation, and if there is no new heaven created, then, Zen was even more curious about the consequence. Then the entire universe will become a death land. No living beings will be born, no living beings will die, and there will be no wars. Everything will return to zero. Brianna smiled lightly and said. Zen was speechless. What's the point of this? They think it's meaningful, so they're a bunch of idiots. Moreover, they're very powerful idiots, Brianna said helplessly. Just now, that woman has affected the power of the soul cores, but I can help restore it. Later I will find a chance to recover it, and you can slip away. But they, all of the top masters of the 4 divine kingdoms were under the woman's control, the 4 rulers also included. Who cares if they die or not? Brianna snapped. Zen's eyebrows creased together. Indeed, it was none of Zen's or Brianna's business. Zen didn't need to help the 4 divine kingdoms. But if he had the chance to save their lives, then he would not sit idly. Meanwhile, the corpses under Dorothea's control advanced slowly behind her, just like wooden zombies. The powerful Soul Sea Realm warriors remained trapped and were still inside the corpses' minds. However, they could still observe their surroundings. As they continued to move forward, dragon-shaped monsters rushed out from various directions. Dorothea continued walking forward as if nothing had happened. Just as the dragon-shaped monsters were about to pounce on her, the flower in her eyes gently rotated, and a faint fragrance wafted out. The dragon-shaped monsters immediately became dizzy, as if they had gotten drunk. Soon enough, they lost their strength and slumped to the ground. After a few more moments of slow progress, they passed by the Jade Lake and continued their way towards the center of the heavenly stellar sacred place. Boom, boom, boom. Loud, booming sounds were heard from a distance not far away. The entire sacred place shook vehemently like boiling pot of porridge. Chapter 891, Fishing. Zen couldn't move, and the great disturbance he felt in front of him was not helping in settling his nerves. What are these guys doing? He asked Brianna in his mind, the shock obvious in his tone. Brianna snorted, only heaven knows. The celestial position race is made up of a bunch of weirdos. Do you know they once tried to destroy all the stars in the universe? They probably got to around more than 20,000 stars until they were ruthlessly slapped by the heavenly law. Many of them died, so they had to give up their stupid plan. Zen was rendered speechless by her words. He remembered how he had been recognized by the celestial position race back in the Tower of Sin. Did that mean he was a member of this weird race? It would be for the best if he wasn't. Zen's body involuntarily moved forward, passing through piles of ruin until he saw a large circular crater. At the edge of the crater were 6 people. Among the 6 were the burly man and the black-clothed young man that Zen had met a while ago. In the middle of the crater, dragon-shaped monsters came out one after another. Roar, 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 roar. The dragon-shaped monsters immediately rushed towards the people that surrounded them. All 6 people were immediately targeted and struck with invisible sound waves from the dragon-shaped monsters. The sound waves, however, did not have the chance to do any damage as the black-clothed young man simply brandished his black saber and cut through the monsters. Black light continuously streamed from his hands as each strike cleaved the dragon-shaped monsters into a rain of bloody mist. That thing is really patient. It just refuses to come out, the burly man said. Dorothea walked over them, followed by the many Soul Sea Realm masters she had under her control. In that case, maybe we should change our method. Then she turned to a man with a silver mask and said, Max, you truly have superb foresight. The heavenly stellar secret land should have been empty, but we were able to find some baits we could use. The celestial position race had dispatched 7 people to this world, and they now worked together to capture a creature from this huge crater. Max, who was wearing a blood-colored cloak and a silver mask, simply nodded at her words. Let's try it. It's your turn now, Hank. Sure, Max, one of them answered with a laugh. This one wore a tattered straw hat and had with him a golden fishing rod. He waved the fishing rod in his hand and a thin green thread flew towards the warriors from the 4 divine kingdoms. A Soul Sea Realm master was immediately caught by his thread. Dorothea had restrained the soul cores used by the 4 divine kingdom warriors to control the corpses. Thus, these corpses, along with the souls within, had been reduced to unmoving bodies similar to inanimate blocks of wood. But they all remained in a state of consciousness. Once caught by the fishing thread, the Soul Sea Realm master realized that a mighty warrior like him was about to become the bait Dorothea had been talking about earlier. He was now about to be sacrificed for the creature that resided in the crater. They would have all trembled in fear at the sight if not for their state of helpless paralysis. Dorothea, however, felt their fear come in waves. Hank, the greater the soul fluctuation, the more attractive it should be to the thing below. Hank nodded as he gently waved the fishing rod and began to lower the bait. However, just as he was lowering down the bait, dozens of dragon-shaped monsters rushed out of the crater, releasing sound wave attacks towards the corpse. Roar, roar, roar. The sound waves were strong and broke down both body and soul of the mighty Soul Sea Realm warrior into fine dust. Humph, Max huffed. That thing is quite cunning. It doesn't want to eat the bait. Hank, release a few more. Hank did as he was told, gently waving the fishing rod and throwing fishing thread towards their collection of bait warriors. All the paralyzed warriors looked in fear at that green fishing thread, knowing that to be caught by it was equivalent to death. Reaching the Soul Sea realm was no easy feat, and now that they had heard of the possibility of repairing the path to the upper world, not a single one of them was willing to die here. However, their current state rendered them completely helpless. They could only watch as the fishing thread came towards them to take control of their lives and lead to their eventual deaths. This time, the thread caught 6 Soul Sea realm warriors. Among the ones caught were 2 leaders of the Jade Martial House that had been treated and respected as noble masters. However, they were now nothing but fish baits for whatever it was inside that crater. I'll make the thread longer this time. Let it have a taste. Once it knows how good these people taste, it'll bite them and fall for our trap. Hank did not pull them into the air but released his fishing thread instead and threw all 6 baits into the large crater. Just as they fell into the crater, the flower in Dorothea's eye turned slightly and screams of despair suddenly resounded from the dark, horrifying crater. Dorothea, why could those guys scream? The black-clothed young man asked curiously. I've released part of my restraining force so that they'd be able to scream. It adds a bit of flavor for that thing, she replied with a smile. Ha ha. Dorothea, you're so mean, the black-clothed man joked, shaking his head in laughter. These Soul Sea realm masters were terrified beyond their wits, so, of course, the first thing they'd do was scream the moment Dorothea released part of her restraining force. However, their cries only lasted for a few seconds before they came to an abrupt stop. A little later, the silence was broken by the terrible sound of cracking bones. Crack, crack, it was as if a huge mouth was currently chomping on the bodies of those Soul Sea realm masters. It was spine-chilling to hear such sounds from the crater. After a while, Dorothea smiled. It should be done by now, right? Again, let's see if it will take the bait this time, Hank exclaimed, waving his fishing rod and taking a few more corpses with it. This time, the green fishing thread headed towards Zen. Both Zen and Brianna frowned at the sight of the thread. Shall I fight back now? He asked her in his mind. However, Brianna maintained her cool. No rush. The owner of this fishing rod is only at the Spirit Supreme realm. Among all of them, only that one called Max is stronger than me. The problem is how much of my strength you can unleash. Brianna's life vitality attribute was very different from Zen's. Therefore, he wouldn't be able to control this body effectively and utilize its full strength. Escape might be an option, but he wasn't too confident that he would be able to really run away. He only had one chance and he had to be careful. However, his salvation came in the unlikeliest package. Just as the green thread reached for him, Dorothea interrupted, Hank, leave this for me. She is alive, Hank remarked in surprise, only realizing now that Brianna wasn't a corpse but a living person. Dorothea nodded. No wonder. I was wondering when your taste became so weird that you began to be interested in corpses. Dorothea's face scrunched in anger at his words. Stop talking nonsense or I'll kill you. Hank merely chuckled, already used to her threats. The green thread lightly trembled and headed for War Emperor York instead. Only 70 Soul Sea realm masters remained, and the chances of the 4 emperors being selected had been very high. It seemed War Emperor York was the unlucky one. Just as the fishing thread came for him, the flower in Dorothea's right eye rotated slightly, releasing a bit of her restraining force. War Emperor York suddenly roared, I am the Emperor of the York Divine Kingdom. I will give you everything. Just spare my life. Chapter 892, Visualization. Only 1 in 100 million warriors could reach the Soul Sea realm. And even a Soul Sea realm master could only play a supporting role in the 4 divine kingdoms. For the past tens of thousands of years, the main characters of the 4 divine kingdoms had been the 4 emperors. In War Emperor York's eyes, his fate was so great that he could ascend to the upper world in the future. His future was limitless, so how could he be willing to die here? Ever since Dorothea had restrained his body, his thoughts had kept spinning and spiraling out of control. This was probably the biggest trouble he had ever faced in his life. He had never felt so powerless even when he had gone into the sea to hunt for the young water-eyed swallowing beast. He knew he couldn't fight back against his enemies with his soul in such a state. No matter how hard he tried, he still wouldn't be able to think of a way to save himself. When Dorothea undid part of the restraining force, he didn't scream like the warriors before him. He knew this was his only chance to tell his opponents that he was a dignified emperor and that he could pay any price in exchange for his own life. And he wanted to seize it. Hank waved the fishing rod in his hand lightly. This time, he did not intend to throw these corpses into the crater. Instead, he would hang them above the crater to lure the thing that lurked below. The front of the fishing rod was only as thick as a little finger, and the thin green thread was fine as a hair. But it was strong enough that 6 or 7 corpses could be hanged without any problem. An emperor. Hank suddenly chuckled at War Emperor York's words. How big is your York divine kingdom? 30 million acres of land. 4 billion living creatures. I can give you my place. I will make you the emperor of York divine kingdom. War Emperor York said rather desperately. Since he was suspended in midair, he could clearly see the situation within the huge crater. He noticed that at the bottom of the crater, there was a pair of huge, demonic red eyes. He knew he was pressed for time, so he took the chance to speak. Or perhaps it was begging for mercy. 30 million acres. Hank didn't know whether to laugh or to cry at this information. How big is 30 million acres? It sounds pretty big. The York Divine Kingdom wasn't small. Of the 4 divine kingdoms, it occupied the largest area of land. But it looked like Hank wasn't interested in the slightest. Dorothea said calmly from some distance away, 30 million acres is about 1 in 10 million of the sacred region of the celestial position world. It's not even as big as my garden. These natives have quite a narrow vision. Is it not enough? If it's not enough, I can give you the entire divine kingdom continent. The 4 divine kingdoms. War Emperor York became anxious. He didn't know what else he could offer to move the hearts of these people. Or perhaps he had already understood that what he was saying was all nonsense and that these people would never take a fancy to anything that belonged to him. The ground began to shake again. Max, that thing is moving. Looks like it can't hold it in any longer. It does work. Dorothea smiled excitedly. Be careful, everyone, it looks like it's about to come out, Max said as a way of warning. Each of the 7 people standing at the edge of the crater adopted a fighting stance, ready to fight against the upcoming enemy. Even though they were extremely powerful, they didn't dare relax in the face of the terrifying existence within the crater. War Emperor York also felt the change. He saw the pair of glowing red eyes getting closer and closer, constantly rising towards the surface. Roar! A pure black dragon's head suddenly reared out of the crater. This dragon was unique in its appearance, very unlike any normal dragon. Dragons and phoenixes were symbols of good fortune. And though dragons were powerful, they didn't look evil. There were 6 pairs of horns on this dragon's head, and its blood-red eyes looked terrifyingly evil. Ordinary warriors would go insane if they were enveloped by its aura. Roar! The pure black dragon jumped out of the huge crater, opening its mouth wide to bite the corpses of the Soul Sea Realm Masters. War Emperor York had now become desperate. He knew that no matter how much he resisted, he wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. The dragon was about to bite the baits, and if it succeeded, there was no chance that they would survive. But at the last moment, Hank gently lifted the fishing rod and pulled War Emperor York and the others higher into the air. The dragon bit down on empty air. Hank wasn't trying to save their lives. He was just trying to lure the huge dragon out of the crater. He didn't even stop to consider War Emperor York and the others, and to him, they simply didn't matter. Roar! The giant dragon's power was imposing and powerful, on par with that of an ordinary genuine dragon. The only difference was probably that it was still young and didn't have a lot of spiritual wisdom. The dragon stretched out, raising its huge head and continuing chasing after the corpses. Hank gripped the fishing rod tightly and swung War Emperor York and the others so that they smashed heavily to the ground. Hank finally said, "It's your turn." At Hank's words, the burly, muscular man, who had been standing at the edge of the crater, jumped to his feet. Flames appeared on the sickle in his hand. The burly man charged at the dragon, sickle waving in the air and creating a circular arc that spiraled and slashed towards the dragon's neck. "Come on, fight me," he roared. Even Zen was secretly shocked at the extent of the power of the man's attack. The power was difficult to estimate, but the giant red sickle in his hand was a divine weapon, which meant that its power was unimaginable. But as the powerful slash landed on the dragon's scale, it only produced an intense flame that sounded like metal clashing, but didn't cut through the dragon's neck. The dragon was indeed on par with a genuine dragon. Such powerful defensive power. What kind of dragon is this? Zen asked Brianna in amazement. Brianna hadn't said anything from the start. She just stared blankly at the giant dragon in the crater. Seeing that Brianna wasn't responding, Zen asked again, "Hey, why aren't you talking?" After a long while, Brianna said, "No wonder. I think those dragon-shaped monsters were summoned by this dragon. I really didn't expect to see the evil dragon appear after so many years." "Evil dragon," Zen said, taken aback. Brianna, however, did not hear Zen and muttered to herself, "It's still not right. Why would the evil dragon appear in the world? There was an ancestral dragon's egg hidden in the sacred place of the dragon lineage human. Could it be that this egg had hatched the evil dragon? This is impossible. Hey, what exactly is the evil dragon?" Zen asked again, now slightly annoyed by Brianna's lack of attention. Brianna finally reacted and said, "The evil dragon is the opposite of the ancestral dragon. It is a faith inheritance derived from our race." "A faith inheritance derived from your race?" Zen said quizzically. He didn't know what she was talking about. Brianna immediately replied, "Neither the ancestral dragon nor the evil dragon should exist. They are only creatures created by the illusions of our race." Creatures created by illusions? Zen felt that the more he listened, the more confused he became. Brianna understood Zen quite well. As a warrior of the lower world, Zen's knowledge of certain things in the upper world was rather limited. She asked, "Hasn't my grandpa Josh told you that? Creatures created by illusions are not strange at all. It's just like your so-called visualization. If you visualize something long enough, you can use the life vitality to create what you want." She continued, "Then, creatures of any race can visualize something together, and eventually produce something that doesn't exist in the world. The secret sect of your human race is a good example. They gathered 1 trillion humans to visualize something together. Of course, they called it faith. They all believed in a sword embryo that didn't exist. After 100,000 years, they finally created that sword embryo. And then, the most powerful human weapon refiner forged a legendary weapon with it." Chapter 893, The Secret of Visualization. A warrior could turn his life vitality into something substantial by meditation and visualization. Take for example a saber. If a warrior wanted to turn his life vitality into a saber, then he would have to spend a lot of time observing and contemplating the blade. The greater his concentration and the longer his visualization, the more powerful the life vitality saber would be. However, this kind of visualization was based on the life vitality. The more real the thing the warrior imagined, the more real the object transformed from the life vitality would be. Without any life vitality, a saber could never hope to take shape no matter how hard the warrior tried to visualize it. According to Brianna, if 100 trillion creatures gathered together and visualized an object, then that object could be formed through sheer willpower alone. It was something beyond Zen's imagination and comprehension. "You mean we can form a legendary weapon just by imagining it? Without the help of life vitality?" Zen asked. "It's not strange," Brianna huffed. "Being the faith of the genuine dragon, the ancestral dragon can let the genuine dragon race become prosperous after being born in this world. You can regard the ancestral dragon as your faith, but why did you let an evil dragon be born? Could it be that many members of the genuine dragon race have taken the evil dragon as their faith?" he asked curiously. Brianna shook her head. "How would that be possible? Who would be silly enough to do that? All creatures in this world have both light and dark sides within them. The evil dragon represents the dark side of the genuine dragon race, similar to perdition. It seems that you have no idea that the entire hell came about from the contemplation of all creatures of the universe." Her words shocked Zen even more. The Netherworld River, the gate of torture. He would never expect that had been formed through nothing but meditation and imagination. It seemed that if one really tried hard to imagine an object, it would really appear and exist in the physical plane. Thoughts were powerful and people should probably be more careful with what they imagined in their minds. The universe truly had a lot of surprises in store. Roar! The evil dragon roared in fiery rage as flames rose from its huge head. The strong man's attack was nothing to the beast, but he still angered it. "It's going to spit dragon's breath. Hank, tie it up," the man with the silver mask ordered. Huff, huff, huff. Green threads began to spiral and twine around the evil dragon, tying its mouth shut instantly. With the dragon's mouth shut, the strong man was able to get close and continue attacking the beast with the huge sickle in his hand. Zen looked up at the dragon. It seems the evil dragon isn't that powerful. The 7 celestial position members are only at the spirit supreme realm, but it doesn't seem to have the ability to resist them. The evil dragon has to undergo 7 transformations to reach the true extent of its power. It seems that it has only undergone 3. If it can go through the 4th transformation, then it will become so powerful that none of the members of the celestial position would be able to defeat it. This is for the best. They're actually helping you kill it. If they let the evil dragon be alive, then it would definitely eat the great world and undergo the 5th transformation, Brianna replied. Eat the great world, Zen repeated. He hadn't had the time to explore the secret of the world's will despite being fused by it, but now that he had become the son of the plane, he wouldn't be able to stand by and just let some dragon eat the great world. Don't concern yourself too much with the evil dragon. Now that they're busy dealing with it, you should take this as a chance for you to escape. And Brianna was right. Initially, the celestial position members had no intention to kill Zen or any of the other insignificant Soul Sea Realm warriors. They were as good as bait in their eyes, but if they couldn't attract the evil dragon, then there was no need to bother. However, the celestial position members were called zero homers. They even tried to stop the reincarnation. The Divine Kingdom warriors would most likely be killed after the evil dragon was dealt with. Escaping was the only choice for Zen at this point. As for Fiona, Callan, and the others of the Divine Kingdoms, he would have to find another way to rescue them. These 7 warriors are all at the Spirit Supreme Realm and I am currently controlling your physical body. How can I escape? He asked, looking around hesitantly. Except for Max, all of them are just at the early stage of the Spirit Supreme Realm. I know you can only use a bit of my strength but I can teach you an escape skill. You should gather and employ my life vitality later and leave as quickly as you can. Zen figured that he didn't really have a choice but to learn this new skill and use it to run away. It seemed that it would give him a better chance of escaping than just merely making use of Brianna's life vitality. Brianna used her consciousness to pass a pithy formula to Zen. This is a wind traveling skill. My life vitality is compatible with the wind traveling mind method but how much of it you can comprehend and master is all up to you. This wind traveling skill is called cloud chasing skill. It is based on the legendary beast, the cloud chasing lion which is second only to the celestial mouse in terms of speed. If you master at least 30% of the skill, you'll be able to escape when they're not looking. Just remember the pithy formula Dharmakaya of cloud, moving 1,000 miles a day, searching at high speed, reaching the heavens and the netherworld. The cloud-chasing lion. Zen was a bit surprised when Brianna imparted the wind-traveling skill to him. Back when he managed to obtain a section of the cloud-chasing lion's bone, he transplanted it to the 100 meetings platform. After that, he gained the ability to move as fast as the cloud-chasing lion but since the bone was used for the body-refining skill, it would only reveal itself when the forceful energy erupted. Forceful energy and life vitality were 2 different kinds of energy but their basic qualities were similar. Coupled with the fact that his current talent was extremely great, it wasn't difficult for Zen to comprehend the cloud-chasing lion's wind-traveling skill. His soul quietly floated in Brianna's mind and gradually grasped the skill. Meanwhile, Brianna's soul stayed in the interior world, silently staring at Zen. She didn't expect him to master it in such a short time. The cloud-chasing skill was extremely difficult to grasp and he would still need to comprehend the wind law. However, since she knew her physical body was compatible with the skill, then maybe it would be enough for her to help him escape. Bang, bang, the evil dragon moved irritably, its battle with the 7 celestial position members in full swing. 5 minutes later, Zen suddenly opened his eyes. How much of the skill have you mastered? Brianna didn't think he'd grasp much of the skill in a mere 5 minutes. It would be enough if he could activate the wind law of her life vitality. I think I've mastered it, Zen said, flashing her a bright smile. To some extent, this skill was tailor-made for him. He was sensitive to the cloud-chasing lion's talent and this skill was created based on the legendary beast. Brianna imparting the skill to him made him gain a new comprehension for it. Oh! The evil dragon let out a deafening roar as it broke free from Hank's grip, its body rising out of the large hole and into the air. Vincent, grab it and drag it back here. Don't let it run away. Dorothea, release the confining power. Brianna's eyes flashed at the scene. Now, this is the best time to escape. Are you ready? Yes, Zen nodded. At that moment, Brianna's interior world began to shake as an intangible power covered her physical body, expelling Dorothea's confining power. Once the confining power was dispelled, Zen immediately felt his soul connect to Brianna's physical body. He wasted no time mobilizing Brianna's life vitality. Dorothea remarked, suddenly realizing that her confining power had been negated. Turning her attention away from the evil dragon, she saw Zen's figure float like the wind and disappear with a flash. Chapter 894, Spire. Although every single person from the celestial position had his or her attention focused on the evil dragon, Zen's sudden disappearance attracted their gaze. They noticed the sudden movement despite their lack of attention. A little mouse has run away. Hey Dorothea, isn't she the one you have a crush on? The black-clothed young man taunted with a smile. However, the person wearing the silver mask said, don't let her run around. Chase after her. There's gonna be so much trouble if she breaks the ancestral dragon egg's hatch. The flower in Dorothea's eye spun slightly as a look of astonishment came to her face. Delroy has put up an enchanted barrier around it. It's not gonna be destroyed, right? But I guess it's best if I capture her and bring her back. After she finished speaking, she chuckled and chased after Zen with a bell-like laughter tolling behind her. Zen was crazily circulating the life vitality within Brianna's body and continuously stimulating the wind law. His figure was moving like a shuttle and rapidly traveling through the air. This fellow. Brianna was completely shocked now and didn't know what to say. To be able to grasp even 30% of the cloud-chasing skill in such a short period of time was a remarkable feat in itself. That was what she had told Zen, but she didn't have too much hope with him. In any case, she had taught the cloud-chasing skill to Zen as a frantic last-minute effort when she was left with no options. However, she had never thought that Zen would be able to grasp almost all of it in such a short amount of time. Just how strong was this fellow's innate talent? If she were to count the capabilities this young man possessed, she would be at a loss. She already knew that the 9 dragons had been residing inside his mind for a long time. And since he was chosen by her grandfather, it was clear that Zen wasn't a common warrior. It was still shocking to see just how powerful he was, though. Even in the genuine dragon world, which was filled with hundreds of talented warriors, she had never seen someone with these many capabilities. Zen had actually grasped 70% of the cloud-chasing skill within a span of 5 minutes. In fact, judging by his speed, he might even have grasped more than 80%. The black lines Brianna could see behind her were something that only appeared when the cloud-chasing lion was running at its topmost speed, which compressed the wind around its body to the maximum. Brianna herself could unleash the full effects of the cloud-chasing skill, but this cultivation technique was created from imitating the innate talent of a legendary beast, which was known as the cloud-chasing lion. When the cloud-chasing lion ran at full pelt, it would create black lines behind it, like a brush doing its work. This was something that even Brianna couldn't do. However, Zen had completely mastered it within 5 minutes, and had even achieved a higher level of cultivation than herself. Now things were getting a bit too hot to handle. Outside, Zen had no idea Brianna was in great shock. In complement to Brianna's amazement, he was sighing at the strength of this spirit supreme realm body he was using and the unparalleled purity of the life vitality inside it. Normally, the life vitality could last for an okay amount of time, but he could feel that the explosive power of the life vitality within Brianna's body was comparable to his own forceful energy. Zen flew past the exit of the sacred place very soon and directly flew through the arch where they had first appeared. He was moving so fast that he didn't even have the time to assess the situation and directly charged towards the arch. In fact, not until he had passed through the arch did he realize that something was wrong. He didn't enter the transmission channel. How was he supposed to get back? What? The transmission channel has been closed. Zen was taken aback. When they had entered the heavenly stellar sacred place, they had used the 2 dragon-shaped keys to open the arch and then activated a transmission channel. Now, the channel had disappeared and the arch was just a stone structure. In Zen's case, it was nothing more than a decoration. Immediately after he stopped, he heard a bell-like laughter behind him. Bet you're surprised about that, huh? Come back with me without making a fuss and I won't kill you. Zen frowned and asked, I'm not your enemy. Why did you pursue me so relentlessly? Who said that we were enemies? I like you, so you have to come with me. Got it. Dorothea laughed and continued, once we have taken care of this place, I will take you somewhere else. The flying passage in the great world has already been destroyed. You don't want to be trapped here for your entire life, do you? A strange expression appeared on Zen's face. So that was the secret. Dorothea was an open-minded person. She liked women. It seems like this woman has taken a fancy to you, Zen teased Brianna with a smile. Brianna screamed from within her body with a red face, go to perdition. Don't move. Follow me obediently. Dorothea's voice suddenly became gentle, and the flower in her right eye slowly started to rotate as she gradually moved closer to Zen. At this moment, Zen's gaze turned soft. He actually forgot to flee, and stood still there. In Zen's eyes, Dorothea had transformed into a unique beauty of the human world. Her entire body was exuding an unfathomable color, and somehow, looked like Zen's greatest desire for a woman. Just as Zen was standing there in a daze, he suddenly felt a sharp, stabbing pain inside him and instantly regained his consciousness. You were being hypnotized by her. Hurry up and run, Brianna screamed. Dorothea had already gotten extremely close to Zen by now. Her eyes looked gentle and soft as she reached out her hand to caress Zen's face. The instant he woke up, Zen punched out. At the same time, he triggered the life vitality within the body. His entire body turned into a violent gust of wind and suddenly evaporated right where he stood. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, he had already traveled thousands of feet away from Dorothea. Dorothea didn't seem to be in a hurry as she followed behind Zen at a leisurely pace. The heavenly stellar secret land was only about the size of her palm as far as she was concerned. No matter how fast Zen was, and how many laws he used, it was impossible for him to escape. Zen changed his direction and continued to speed along. He was thinking about how he was going to leave the heavenly stellar sacred place. Although they had originally entered through a transmission array, the place was still a physical construct and was built inside the Feather Holy Sea, which existed in the same dimension as his own. If Zen was able to find a space crack, he would be able to leave without the need of a transmission channel. However, as he traveled, disappointment appeared on his face. He could not discover a single crack in the fabric of space around him. Ahu, another wave of earth-shaking voice came. On the other side of the heavenly stellar sacred place, the 6 celestial position warriors and the evil dragon were still engaged in a fierce battle. Even from such a long distance, Zen could still see that a thick pillar of fire was shooting towards the sky. From the looks of it, the battle had already reached its climax. However, he chose to ignore the battle. But the slight moment of losing attention did cost him. While he was running, a white flower strangely appeared not far in front of him. That flower was blooming at an unbelievable speed, and Dorothea walked out from within the flower. She had a smile on her face as she told Zen, "Little thing, you won't be able to escape." When he saw this scene, Zen didn't pause and swept past her again. Dorothea kept pursuing Zen in the heavenly stellar sacred place, still traveling at her leisurely pace. After a while, Zen noticed a transparent enchanted barrier covering a spire not too far away. "What is that?" Zen's eyes flashed faintly when he saw the transparent barrier. It seemed that dramatic changes were taking place inside the barrier, whatever that place was. The bottom of the spire seethed and teemed with life, with all sorts of strange flowers and herbs covering the area. Vines were coiled around the exterior walls of the spire, and the strangest thing was that these plants were growing at a speed that could be seen with the naked eye. In fact, not only growth, Zen could even see death as the vines seethed, grew, twisted, withered and died. Time. The speed at which time is passing within that barrier is remarkably fast. "What exactly is inside that spire?" Zen inquired. Brianna shook her head. "I'm not sure. The barrier has almost completely isolated all of the auras from within and I can't feel a thing." "Let's go in." Regardless of what was inside, Zen didn't think too much and charged towards the barrier. He didn't have much of a choice anyway. The moment he approached the barrier, his life vitality gushed out and he punched the barrier with all of his strength. Boom! Even though he was controlling a spirit supreme realm body, his punch did not even crack the barrier. Chapter 895, Time elapsing. Before Zen could try anything else, another snow-white flower bloomed beside Zen. Dorothea quietly stepped out from it. When she saw Zen's actions, she smiled faintly and told him, "The barrier cast by Delroy won't be broken so easily. You might as well give up and save your energy." Zen stared at her and asked, "What's inside?" She chuckled, "If I tell you, will you obediently follow me? I guarantee that I won't let you suffer or come to any harm." Hearing this, Zen smiled, "In that case, you have to tell me first." "This is a sacred place. The ancestral dragon and the evil dragon appeared in here at the same time. At the end of this era, our celestial position will naturally collect them. We must stop the evil dragon, and also get the ancestral dragon." Dorothea answered. "So, is it the ancestral dragon inside this spire? Or is there more to the story?" Zen's eyes glinted. Dorothea tilted her head and replied in affirmative with a smile, "Yes." "Great." Zen suddenly took out the black star pickaxe from his space ring and swooshed it down towards the enchanted barrier. Originally, Dorothea wasn't concerned even though Max had been worried that Zen would run around and barge into this place, interfering with the incubation of the ancestral dragon egg. However, Dorothea was sure that this worry was unnecessary, since Delroy's enchanted barrier was not that easy to break. Furthermore, she could sense that although the woman in front of her seemed to be alive, she was, in fact, relying on a soul core to drive her physical body. This meant that she would be unable to unleash her strength. As for why Zen was able to use his unique movement technique, and how he was moving so fast, Dorothea could not understand. But no matter what, speed and strength were two different things. And the enchanted barrier that Delroy had cast contained a special law of causality, so it could not have been broken by an ordinary cultivator at the Spirit Supreme realm. However, when Zen pulled out the pickaxe, her expression changed drastically. At the same time, the flower in her eye started to spin crazily and turned a dirty shade of red from its usual, beautiful white. "The supreme divine weapon Black Star!" Dorothea screamed. By the time she had finished, Zen had already brandished the pickaxe and struck the enchanted barrier. The barrier suddenly shattered. Since in its entirety, the barrier was a single entity, even if a single part of it was damaged, the entire barrier would instantly shatter like powdered glass. With a loud clang, the enchanted barrier collapsed. At the same time, among the group of 6 men who were still fighting the evil dragon, a middle-aged man dressed in an embroidered green robe, suddenly cursed with a shocked expression on his face. Dang it. Max, who was wearing a silver mask, asked, Delroy, what's wrong? Someone destroyed my enchanted barrier. Delroy replied with a frown. The moment they heard his words, the faces of Max and everyone else turned grim. This time, once they had entered the lower world, everything had gone smoothly inside the heavenly stellar sacred place. That was thanks to one of the celestial position warriors, who had used a secret technique to manipulate Max's luck, allowing him to essentially double the good fortunes that came on him within a few months. Logically speaking, they should have been able to smoothly capture the evil dragon, and have the ancestral dragon hatched. Then they could have brought the evil dragon and the ancestral dragon back to the celestial position race. But now, a change had occurred. Delroy's enchanted barrier had covered the top of the tower and locked it inside. Once Max changed the time flow rate, it wouldn't take long for the ancestral dragon egg to hatch. All they needed to do was focus on dealing with the evil dragon. Unexpectedly, the enchanted barrier had been broken. Could it be the woman who just escaped? The tall and sturdy man ran over and asked, defending himself from a wave of fire. He had dodged the evil dragon's claw and replaced himself with someone else. Impossible. Even though that woman is at the Spirit Supreme realm, she's not strong enough to shatter Delroy's enchanted barrier. I wonder what Dorothea is doing. She has been away for too long now. It gives me the jitters. Woody, go check, Max instructed. The black-clothed youth nodded his head. The cynical smile on his face disappeared, and his figure turned into a black shadow. He flew towards the tower like a ghost. As for Zen, the moment he managed to break the barrier, he got inside it. The time flow rate within the enchanted barrier was completely different from that of the outside world. It seemed to be flowing several times faster, and he could actually see the plants reproduce, die, reproduce and then die again quickly. From Zen's perspective, he did not feel anything. But Dorothea, outside the enchanted barrier, essentially saw him disappear with a flash after he got inside the tower. All this was because the time flow rate gradient between the outside world and the tower. Dorothea gritted her teeth and with a flash, she also entered the enchanted barrier. However, because of the delay of about 30 seconds that had elapsed when she hesitated to go behind Zen, the time gap she had to face was huge. The time flow rate inside was a very interesting number. For the 30 seconds that Dorothea had wasted outside gawking at Zen's invisible figure, more than 8 hours had passed for Zen on the inside. Of course, Zen couldn't feel that difference at all once he was inside. In fact, from his perspective, he felt that time was going by at a normal speed. Only those who were outside the barrier could see just how amazing the consequences of a different time flow rate were. The tower. Zen raised his head to look at the huge structure in front of him. If it weren't for all those unexpected events that had happened in the heavenly stellar sacred place, this place would have been the destination of Zen and the other Soul Sea Realm warriors. Also, he had no idea what kinds of traps were inside this tower. Even after so many years, not a single Soul Sea Realm warrior had ever managed to fetch the ancestral dragon egg. Although it was highly embarrassing to be chased by someone, Zen wasn't bothered about that. His goal this time was the ancestral dragon egg. It was a coincidence that he had accidentally entered this place. He walked straight towards the door of the huge structure in front of him. He had originally intended to break through the door. But the moment he came to and stood in front of it, a ray of faint light glistened from the door frame. Once it had circled around the door frame once, the door slowly opened of its own accord. Behind the door was a pitch-black space. Zen turned his head to look at the outside world. The sky was what greeted him. Perhaps it was because of the time law that except for the area that lay about several hundred feet around the tower, the entire heavenly stellar sacred place had disappeared from Zen's sight. Anyway, since he could not see Dorothea chasing him anymore, Zen stepped through the door. Now he saw that in the empty space, there were glowing steps. These steps were circling around and rising up. Zen stepped on them and started to climb quickly. After climbing for a while, Zen suddenly saw a giant chain appear at the top of the stairs. He looked carefully at it and found that a small, glowing object was attached in the middle of the chains. In fact, it was completely tied up by the numerous chains that surrounded it. Zen stared intently at it and suddenly, his eyes sparked. This is the ancestral dragon egg, a calm voice sounded from within his inner world. It was obvious that Brianna had also noticed the object and recognized it. A faint smile appeared on Zen's face, but then he heard Brianna tell him, in a tone that sounded like she was shaking her head, "You can't take it away." I can't. What do you mean? Why not? Zen wondered. If it were so easy to obtain, it wouldn't have taken the 4 divine kingdoms and their emperors so many years, Brianna pointed out faintly. Zen agreed with her words. The heavenly stellar sacred place wasn't that dangerous, yet the soul sea realm warriors of the 4 divine kingdoms, who had entered the place so many times, had still been unable to get their hands on the ancestral dragon egg. These are just some chains. I think I can handle them. Zen shook his head as he spoke, though his face revealed a look of doubt. He thought that those warriors hadn't been able to get the egg because the chains were too hard to break. Luckily, he had the black star. It shouldn't be difficult for him to break this chain. He had to try anyway. Chapter 896. The Crack on the Ancestral Dragon Egg. Devoid of any hesitation, Zen took out the black star pickaxe and held it in his hand. There wasn't much time left for him. If Dorothea arrived, then he would be in a lot of trouble. However, just as he brandished the black star pickaxe and hit the chains, a seemingly odd scene transpired. As a supreme divine weapon, it was capable of destroying anything. There was rarely anything in the universe that it couldn't crush. And to his surprise, it actually penetrated the chains. Is it an illusion? Zen was amazed and bewildered at the same time. The chains in front of him, as well as the ancestral dragon egg that was wrapped in chains, seemed to be nothing more than illusions. He then hastily reached out his hands for the chains. His fingers infiltrated through them with ease, and he felt nothing. What is going on? Zen wondered. Both the chains in front of him and the ancestral dragon egg in the center were lifelike. He couldn't assimilate that they were only illusions. He could see them, but he couldn't touch anything. Brianna smiled faintly and remarked, if I guessed it right, the ancestral dragon egg is sealed in another layer of space, so you can see it, but you cannot touch it. Another layer of space? He was confused at her words. He was indeed proficient in the space law, and even before he had gone through the baptism of laws, his affinity with the space law had achieved an unprecedentedly high level. Although after undergoing the baptism of laws, he had no problem cultivating any original laws, he was still the most sensitive to the space law. At any rate, he had only reached the second layer of the space law. If he was given enough time to practice in the 4 divine kingdoms and was able to obtain the totems carrying the 3rd and 4th layers of space law, he might have the chance to gradually comprehend them. However, after he came to the 4 divine kingdoms, there was not much time for him to practice. From the moment he entered the Harlan divine kingdom, he had busied himself in achieving his goal of finding and accumulating the life stones. Later on, he participated in the competition by the side of the West Dragon River. After that, he entered the Feather Holy Sea. He rarely had any time to think about anything else. Yes, if I am not mistaken, this should be the 5th layer of the space law, the so-called refraction. This ancestral dragon egg seems to be sealed in another space. Everything you see is only the refraction through space. It is simply impossible to take out the ancestral dragon egg that easily. Brianna shook her head and added, unfortunately, I don't specialize in space law. Back then, I could only comprehend a layer of it. Because of this reason, War King Wind and the other rulers were unable to take away the ancestral dragon egg. Zen frowned. After all, mastering the original law required much effort and skill to deal with it. The first layer was relatively easy. The second layer was extremely difficult. And if one wanted to master the 3rd layer of the original law, one must possess a divine-level talent at the least, and those martial artists who could master the 4th layer were likely to be the core members of their race, even in the upper world. As for the 5th layer, it wasn't something that an ordinary martial artist could reach. Whoosh! Zen's figure flashed as he traveled through space. He instinctively stretched out an arm towards the ancestral dragon egg in the center. Just like earlier, he seemed to be grasping a mirage of the ancestral dragon egg. These chains and this ancestral dragon egg were all indeed illusions. It's useless. If my guess is correct, those warriors from the celestial position also didn't master the space law well. They can't take out the ancestral dragon egg, so they came up with another method, Brianna calmly stated. What method? Zen probed further. It's so simple. They try to accelerate the ripening of this ancestral dragon egg. They plan to change the time flow rate by accelerating it in the entire steeple. With time flow rate increased by 1,000 times, they will wait for the ancestral dragon to hatch. Soon after the ancestor dragon comes out, they can take it away, Brianna assumed. Zen nodded. This time, he completely agreed with her analysis. But, his eyebrows furrowed again. Now that I have entered this steeple, doesn't it mean that the time law will also apply to me? Wouldn't it be too long before this ancestral dragon egg hatches if I wait right here? The rate of time flow was considered normal beyond the extent of influence of time law. But within the range, time flew 1,000 times faster. Now that Zen was within this range, his time flow rate seemed to be in sync with that of the ancestral dragon egg. Your analysis makes sense. If you want to wait for the ancestral dragon egg to hatch, there might be hope if the ancestral dragon is about to break out of the shell. Otherwise, the only thing you can do is leave the range of the time law and slowly wait. Brianna blinked her eyes as she went on. This will be even more troublesome. For a moment, Zen couldn't think of a better way. It was also at this moment when Zen instantaneously heard the sound of footsteps approaching. When he looked down, he saw Dorothea climbing up the stairs, and their eyes met. Dorothea let out a small wicked smile and mocked, "I'll forgive you this time. But you destroyed the enchanted barrier outside. Delroy would not easily let you go. Obediently follow me out of here." "Well, it's not too late." Zen breathed out lightly. The biggest drawback after he entered the heavenly stellar sacred place this time was that he couldn't use his own abilities. Although he had taken over Brianna's body, it was still impossible to utilize her full strength. It was so depressing. However, this group of warriors were all at the Spirit Supreme realm. They could not be underestimated even in the upper world. Even if Zen had not been affected by the power of the Feather Holy Sea's blood sacrifice, he would still be like an ant in front of these masters of the Spirit Supreme realm with his current strength at the life and death realm. He would not be able to fight back. "Good girl, come with me." Dorothea continued to laugh as she lightly stepped onto the stairs and slowly walked up. Right at this moment, Zen's gaze happened to land on the ancestral dragon egg. He noticed that a tiny crack had appeared on it. "A crack? You are so lucky, this ancestral dragon is coming out." He heard Brianna's voice. "But that woman is coming." Zen communicated with Brianna in his mind. "Find a way to delay her. The ancestral dragon has the imprinting behavior. As soon as it comes out from the egg, it will follow and become attached to the first moving object it encounters." Brianna pointed out. The hatch of the ancestral dragon egg would take a long time beyond anyone's imagination. It was true that the power of the blood sacrifice exerted by the dragon lineage human had sealed the place for that long time, and Zen had no inkling on how long the time law had been in effect here. If the celestial position entered the heavenly stellar sacred place a year ago, then under a time flow rate that was 1,000 times faster than the normal time flow rate, the time had passed for close to 1,000 years in this space. Regardless of this, when he arrived here, the ancestral dragon egg had finally cracked. Perhaps this was to be considered his luck. Imprinting behavior. Zen didn't have time to mull over the meaning of this phrase. Dorothea was already walking up to him step by step. He needed to find a topic to delay her. He turned to her after some thought as an idea came to his mind and asked, "Celestial position, do you all belong to celestial position?" When Dorothea heard him mention the celestial position, she was surprised. She asked with confusion, How do you know that?" He grinned slightly, then replied, "It's because I also belong to the celestial position." Hearing this, Dorothea showed an expression of disbelief. She giggled and exclaimed, "It's impossible. Every member of our celestial position possesses a special mark. If you are a warrior recognized by our celestial position, I must be feeling the existence of that mark." Zen smiled faintly as his expression became more at ease. "You should have noticed that this body doesn't belong to me, right?" Dorothea nodded her head. Her power to restrain the soul cores was also effective on the girl in front of her, which meant that she had also relied on the soul core to control the physical body she was in now. However, Dorothea didn't know about the soul sealing spell on Brianna, so she felt very strange about the body in front of her as well. It was a living physical body, so why did she still need to control her physical body through the soul core? Wouldn't it be unnecessary? Zen's explanation, however, sort of answered some of her doubts. "You said that you obtained the recognition of the celestial position. But to think that you are only a martial artist from the lower world, how did you gain the recognition of our celestial position?" Dorothea probed with a smile. She refused to believe what Zen said. From the corner of his eyes, he noted the crack on the ancestral dragon egg was slowly spreading. He then quickly replied, "Tower, I obtained the recognition of celestial position in a tower." The Tower of Sin originally belonged to the celestial position, so what he said was the truth. Chapter 897, Unbelievable. "A tower?" Dorothea asked with a skeptical expression on her face. There were 3 towers used for training in her celestial position race. In order to gain recognition of the celestial position, a warrior normally had to pass the talent tablet test in one of the 3 towers. However, one of the 3 towers had been lost, not to be found again. When Zen suddenly mentioned a tower, Dorothea was convinced a little. "What's the name of the tower?" she asked with a frown. "Tower of Sin, Zen continued, his eyes fixed on the ancestral dragon egg, yearning for it. More and more cracks were appearing on its surface. On the upper half of the dragon's egg, the cracks spread out like spider webs. Tower of Sin, that's not right. Dorothea shook her head. It's not what the Lost Tower is called. Hearing her words, Zen smiled. He knew very well that he wasn't lying, so he was confident that he could use this subject to engage her attention. The Tower of Sin has 15 floors. I took the talent tablet test on the 10th. I still remember the names on the first row of the talent tablet, such as Abigail Yun, Odom Gu, Cliff, Fire, and so forth. Odom Gu. Dorothea was surprised to hear Zen utter the name, her smiling face immediately turning grave. That was the Tower of Crystal. I believe you have been there. Tower of Crystal. Zen remembered that. Tower of Sin was the name given to it by the creatures of the sea god continent, but since it was the celestial position's tower for training, it was naturally not called the same here. It seemed that it had originally been called the Tower of Crystal. The reason why Dorothea was so excited was that she heard a very familiar name escape Zen's mouth, Odom Gu. Her full name was Dorothea Gu. Odom Gu was her father. Where is the Tower of Crystal? Dorothea Gu asked him. As Zen heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have revealed something that he shouldn't have revealed just to stall for time. Tower of Sin was very important to the sea god continent. It was the same with the Purple Heart sacred place of humans. Although the Heavenly Feather sacred place had already developed, the Purple Heart sacred place was still relatively weak. If they found out the whereabouts of the Tower of Sin and took it away, it would be impossible for the human race to become stronger than the Flaming Ogre sacred place and the Dread Ogre sacred place in such a short amount of time. Perhaps that was good news for the ogres. Seeing the hesitation on Zen's face, Dorothea Gu sneered, this great world's ascension passage has been sealed. The Tower of Crystal must be here. It won't be too difficult to find it. If you're so unwilling to answer me, I will not force you, but... You said you received the recognition of the celestial position. What row is your talent in? I hope it's not the 4th or the 5th. Although the 3 towers of the celestial position had been differently named, their shapes and details were about the same. In fact, the 3 towers were not only used for trials, but also as weapons of suppression. Dorothea Gu had great talent. In the Tower of Illusory, her talent had been ranked in the 1st row. As far as she knew, only the warriors whose talents were in the first 2 rows in the talent tablet test had the potential to be recognized by the celestial position. As for the martial artists whose talents were below the 2nd row, their names were also recorded on the tablet, but since there were other countless warriors like them in the upper world, they were not deemed worthy. Dorothea Gu's instinct was to disregard Zen, a young boy who stole a Spirit Supreme Realm warrior's body. How could he be as strong? Hearing her question, Zen smiled faintly. I don't belong to any rows. Oh, her expression dimmed. A young man whose name is not even listed on the tablet, and who claims that he belongs to the celestial position race. You must be delusional. Previously, Dorothea Gu had thought that Zen's name was in the 2nd row. If that was the case, she could indeed see Zen as a member of the same race. The celestial position warriors were not in great numbers, but they were all elites. Amber from Heavenly Feather's sacred place was a great instance of it. After her name was listed in the 2nd row of the tablet, it only took her 200 years to become the leader of the Heavenly Feather sacred place. She even led them in the war against the Flaming Ogre sacred place and the Dread Ogre sacred place. However, ever since the Ascension Passage was sealed, Amber was unable to break through the Soul Sea realm. Her lifelong achievements had come to a halt. If the Great World's Ascension Passage was intact, then she would have been able to cultivate to a higher realm and progress even among the many members of the Demon Knight in the upper world. Zen, however, couldn't even manage to get his name on the tablet. In Dorothea Gu's opinion, he wouldn't make a great talent in any race. The celestial position was out of the question. How naive was he to think that he had the recognition of the celestial position just because he had been to the talent tablet? Suddenly, another crack appeared in the middle of the ancestral dragon egg. Zen raised his eyebrows, continuing, you think I'm delusional. My name is not there in the 6 rows, but it has been recorded. Recorded? Where? Dorothea was confused at his reply. Above the names of those such as Odom Gu and Cliff, he said softly. What? Dorothea Gu spluttered, seemingly losing her composure. She took a deep breath. So you say, what is your title then? She asked somewhat nervously. Asura, Rikshasa, Innate, 8, which one? Is the name in gold or silver? There are so many titles. Zen was instantly taken aback by Dorothea's words. He was aware that the ones who ranked above the first row naturally surpassed the other warriors. However, since his name was the only one there, he didn't know that so many titles existed. In truth, a great deal of emphasis was placed on the titles on the talent tablet. Moreover, each of them was of a different level. For instance, Asura and the Rakshasa were the two highest titles. Then, there were titles such as an 8 and so on. In fact, anyone who could obtain any of these titles was considered to be among the strongest warriors in the universe. The difference between the titles was quite small. But however small, it still made a difference. The titles were also classified into gold, silver, and bronze, where gold was the highest and bronze the lowest. You say that you've obtained a title. So tell me, what title did you obtain? Asked Dorothea, staring at Zen. Zen looked puzzled. It's none of those that you've mentioned. Dorothea Gu frowned. Is it Young Heart, or Sea Arriving? Those two titles were ranked at the very end. However, even so, they were impressive enough. Although Dorothea Gu had been listed in the first row, she hadn't gotten any of those titles. Neither, Zen said. If I remember correctly, it was the gold, celestial position. After Zen said this, the flower in Dorothea Gu's right eye started to whirl. The root of the flower was buried deep in her eye. Seeing the flower spin like this, Zen wondered if she was in pain. What he didn't know was that his words had set off a storm in her heart. How is this possible? Celestial position. Gold celestial position. Dorothea Gu found his words incredible. As per Zen, he had been to the Tower of Crystal and indeed taken the talent tablet test. If he hadn't seen the words, celestial position, inscribed on the tablet, he wouldn't have known that such a title even existed. Dorothea Gu knew that for a fact, which was why she found his claim so hard to believe. Chapter 898, Imprinting. It was natural for any living being with a mind to desire improvement and betterment. Thus, all the races in the universe gave their all to expand and develop their forces. In order to improve their races in the fastest pace possible, they had to train their young talents just as vigorously. It was why every race had designed their own sets of rules to conduct a series of tests, which would evaluate the skills of the young members. Of course, each method of assessment differed greatly from each other. Aside from the observation of the lotus flowers, the testing methods from 3 races were considered the most accurate of them all. The heavenly path from the human race, the ogre abyss of the ogres, and the 3 magical towers of the celestial position race. Anyone who obtained any of the titles in the 3 magical towers would receive close protection by the celestial position race, and would be considered one of their core members. The same was also applied to those even of the lowest titles. Up until now, only less than 100,000 living members of the celestial position race had managed to possess a title. 80,000 of them held a bronze title. 18,000 of them had a silver. Only 1,000 managed to have a golden title. Among all of the members, only about 60 were given the Rakshasa or the Asura title. As for the celestial position title, only 6 people were known to have it. They had all become absolute leaders of the celestial position race, and were considered legendary figures. That was why Dorothea felt taken aback by Zen's words. She couldn't believe that this person in front of her had such an exceptional talent, as if Zen had only existed in dreams. She had been previously delighted when she heard about the Tower of Crystal. They had come here to complete an important task of capturing the ancestral dragon and the evil dragon, and the information about the Tower of Crystal was an unexpected surprise. If they managed to bring back the Tower of Crystal to the celestial position race, it would definitely be recorded as a great contribution, even greater than the capture of the ancestral dragon and the evil dragon. However, all of that seemed insignificant now when they had discovered someone with a golden celestial position title. At that point, Dorothea wanted to stop the capture of the evil and the ancestral dragons so that she could go to the Tower of Crystal and seek the truth. Once she had verified whether Zen had really passed the test of the talent tablet and obtained the golden celestial position title, they would bring this man to the celestial position race as soon as they could. Dorothea could only imagine the shock on the faces of the celestial position's higher-ups if they brought this man in front of them. You are not lying to me, right? Dorothea asked in a trembling voice. She couldn't speak straight with all the adrenaline and excitement that flowed into her being. Dorothea had always been proud to be ranked at the first row of the talent tablet. But every time she met other members of the celestial position race with a title, she felt a bit frustrated that her talent was inferior to theirs. Nonetheless, she also understood that talent was only an indicator of a warrior's abilities. Her arduous efforts and good luck still might make it possible for her to surpass those titled talents. Such instances weren't rare. Still, she didn't feel the same way towards the man in front of her. Their talents had such a huge gap between them, that she wouldn't even compare to him at all. Zen nodded as he looked at Dorothea with a smile and then said, "Yes, I'm not lying to you." But what? Dorothea blinked nervously. She hoped that Zen wouldn't say anything that would disappoint her. Zen chuckled and said, "It looks like the ancestral dragon has hatched successfully." While they talked, the shell of the chained ancestral dragon egg had been completely broken. A soft nose nudged a shell piece away, and revealed a hairy body inside. The tiny creature looked less like a newborn baby dragon and more like a small seahorse instead. It had a long and thin head, and a pair of large eyes that glowed a bright cyan. After the tiny ancestral dragon came out from its eggshell, it swallowed the eggshell in one gulp, then started to look around in curiosity. "Keep making up stories to trick that woman, and try to draw the ancestral dragon's attention to you. Once it stares at you first, it will recognize you as its family by imprinting," Brianna reminded Zen in his mind. Then, Brianna heard Zen explain to Dorothea about his golden title, which looked like it shocked her. Although Brianna had also heard about the towers of the celestial position race, she herself had never seen them, and couldn't understand what Zen meant. Even then, Brianna admired how Zen spoke. Of course, it wasn't because he had obtained a golden title or whatever it was, but she was impressed in how he got to trick this woman from the celestial position race like a fool. She believed that Zen merely made up stories. His boasting skills are truly not for show, she thought. After the small, furry creature had stared at Zen for quite a while, Zen finally smiled and told Dorothea that the ancestral dragon's egg had hatched. A soft purr was heard from the tiny dragon as it stared at Zen. Suddenly, it jumped and easily broke free from the refracted space, and proceeded to pounce towards Zen. If this had happened a few moments prior, Dorothea would have been furious. They had painstakingly set up all sorts of devices in the Heavenly Stellar's secret land just to capture the ancestral dragon and the evil dragon. But now, Zen had messed up their plan, and all their efforts were wasted. But after Dorothea had made sure that Zen was most likely telling the truth, the ancestral dragon didn't seem that important anymore. She was surprisingly calm at this moment. If this man really possessed the golden celestial position title, then it wouldn't be surprising if the ancestral dragon acknowledged him at the right time. He undoubtedly had really good luck. Meanwhile, the little dragon purred and jumped into Zen's arms. It showed a close sense of intimacy towards him, and it kept nudging its furry head against his chest. It was known that an oviparous creature could move around completely on its own after it hatched out, and could also think independently to some extent. Thus, it was possible for such creatures to imprint. This meant that they automatically recognized the first living creature around them as their mothers. On the other hand, creatures like humans were completely ignorant upon birth. They needed a long period of training and learning before they could gradually establish their own awareness. Thus, such creatures did not have any imprinting behavior. The ancestral dragon might be the faith of the genuine dragon race, but it was also influenced by the imprinting. After it saw Zen at first sight, a strong imprint had been formed in the little dragon's mind. And because of the imprint's effect, it recognized Zen as its mother. The 7 people of the celestial position race had actually prepared to prevent the imprinting behavior. They had originally planned to use the time law to hatch the ancestral dragon first, then seal it and bring it back to the celestial position race before any imprinting could happen. This matter was to be done by the higher-ups of their race. However, the ancestral dragon had hatched out faster than they had expected, and Zen had accidentally run into this spire when Dorothea chased him. Then he obtained the dragon's acknowledgement on Brianna's instructions. As he carried the small dragon with his hands, Zen thought that Dorothea would attack him out of anger, so he thought about how to escape. But Dorothea didn't even move the slightest. She just stood there and blankly stared at him. She didn't even pay the least bit of attention to the small dragon in his arms. What's wrong with this woman? Zen was confused, so he asked Brianna's soul inside the body. She shook her head and said, "I don't know, either. Maybe she was taken aback by the amazing stories you've made up just now." "I didn't make up anything," Zen retorted. "Who knows? I don't believe a bit of it, anyway," Brianna sneered. She had witnessed Zen's bragging skills before, so she didn't believe his words at all. "You should go with me," Dorothea piped up from out of the blue. "Go with you? Why?" Zen was totally confused. "I won't pursue the ancestral dragon egg anymore. But, you have to obey me first," Dorothea said seriously. Chapter 899, Explanation. Dorothea was well aware of what the real priority was. Although the ancestral dragon was indeed important, it was still nothing compared to a warrior with the title of the golden celestial position. Even if they found out it wasn't true, they would still be able to take away the ancestral dragon. An imprinting was always troublesome, most especially the imprinting on this ancestral dragon. Even the celestial position race would have to pay a considerable price if they wanted to remove it from the ancestral dragon. Still, that was only trouble that could be solved. And no matter how much trouble they dealt with, they probably still wouldn't be able to get a warrior with the celestial position title. After a moment of thought, Dorothea decided to verify the matter before anything. Seeing Zen's golden eyes remain vigilant, Dorothea knew he was still hostile toward her. With a slight smile, she said, "I won't capture you. Can you follow me?" Albeit cautiously, Zen still nodded. With that, Dorothea started walking down the stairs step by step, while Zen followed behind, carrying the ancestral dragon in his arms. The two quickly exited the tall, pointed tower, leaving the area affected by the time law. Although they spent an hour in the tower, the time flow rate they were under the influence of sped up real time by 1,000, to the outside world, they were in and out of the tower in an instant. The moment Zen stepped outside the tower, the time flow rate around him returned to normal, all the plants around the area covered by the time law began to rapidly blossom, wither, and die in a cycle. Whoosh! A black shadow flashed toward Zen and Dorothea, like a swallow flying through the clouds before he stopped midair. It turned out to be a man in black called Woody. "Dorothea, what happened? Why did Delroy's enchanted barrier shatter?" he asked immediately. But before he could finish his words, his gaze fell on Zen, who was standing still behind Dorothea. His focus shifted to the small dragon in Zen's arms. Realizing what it was, Woody's eyes shone aggressively. "What's going on? The ancestral dragon has it already hatched." When Woody entered the pointed tower numerous times in the past, the ancestral dragon was ever protected by a refracted space, and he was unable to take it for himself. All he could do was to make use of the time flow rate to speed up its hatching. So even if Delroy's enchanted barrier was broken, they weren't too nervous about it. Even with the enchanted barrier broken, no one should have been able to take the egg away. But when Woody saw Zen holding that very dragon, he was baffled, wondering what really unfolded in the pointed tower. Without much thought, Woody had the instant urge to snatch the small dragon from Zen's hands right at that moment. But Zen would not let Woody take it. Suddenly, he activated the life vitality within his body as he exerted the cloud-chasing skill, ready to escape. "Don't try to run," Woody sneered. Then, he unsheathed the enormous black saber and began fiercely chopping at Zen. Dorothea frowned and the flower in her right eye suddenly spun. A pink, blinding light shot out from the flower's pistol. Bang! The light went right for Woody's black saber, instantly sealing it in place. Preparing to slash down, Woody was going extremely fast as he brandished the black saber. But the sealing power of Dorothea's pink light was too domineering. After being sealed once, the black saber was completely wrapped and suspended midair, unable to move an inch. Never did Woody expect Dorothea to use such a powerful sealing skill on his saber. Just as he was about to slash down, the saber turned uncontrollable and slipped out of his hand. In the end, he held on to nothing but air as he tried to slash Zen. It was rather humiliating for him. "Dorothea, what are you doing? Are you going to betray the celestial position?" Woody asked her, like a warning. When he saw Zen carrying the dragon and following behind Dorothea, Woody could tell that something was wrong. Now that Dorothea was blatantly getting in his way, he couldn't understand what was going on in her head. Dorothea betraying the celestial position was the only plausible conclusion he could come to. But much to his surprise, Dorothea shook her head. "No, there's something more important I have to do." "Something more important? What are you saying?" Woody asked, almost in a fit of rage. Though he had always respected Dorothea, at this moment, he couldn't think of anything more important than the ancestral dragon. Collecting the newly hatched ancestral dragon and the young evil dragon was the whole purpose of their trip. It wasn't a particularly difficult mission, but it was truly important. After pondering, Dorothea decided that there were some things she did not need to explain to Woody. But after seeing his glare, she continued, "I found the Tower of Crystal." The Tower of Crystal. After the initial stunned silence, Woody began to understand. As a member of the celestial position, he had once entered the Tower of Illusory for training. His name was right beside Dorothea's on the first row. He was aware of the 3 towers that were used for training, but the Tower of Crystal had been lost. These 3 towers were very important to the celestial position race. Finding the Tower of Crystal was no small matter. But so what if we find the Tower of Crystal? We cannot let this guy just take the ancestral dragon away. Woody was clearly indignant. The Tower of Crystal and the ancestral dragon were completely unrelated to each other. "You don't need to say any more," Dorothea said. Let's go and look for Max first. You'll understand later. Gritting his teeth, Woody didn't say anything in the end. He knew how Dorothea normally was, she always seemed happy-go-lucky, fond of playing tricky games. Very rarely was she deadly earnest in dealing with anything. Seeing how serious she was, Woody had to consider the gravity of the matter. With that, Dorothea walked to the front while Zen followed behind, the small dragon still in his arms. All the while, Woody stared at Zen ruthlessly, making sure that he wouldn't try to run away again. The three of them kept a constant speed as they flew above the heavenly stellar sacred place. Meanwhile, the little dragon in Zen's arms was running its fluffy head against his face. From time to time, it made a gurgling sound, much like a human infant, acting spoiled in Zen's care. At that moment, a sorrowful roar suddenly erupted. "Ah!" When the roar was heard, the dragon in Zen's arms suddenly began trembling as it buried its small head into Zen's chest. By then, it had regarded Zen as its mother, thinking that Zen could protect it by all means. The roar was of the evil dragon in the distance. On that end, Max and the other four continued suppressing the young evil dragon. "Be careful, this evil dragon will seal himself up and undergo the fourth transformation. Stop it, or we'll be in huge trouble. Attack its neck, I've already cut it open." Boom, boom, boom. The powerful attacks landed right on the evil dragon's body one after another, releasing intense light right on the surface of its body. At the edge of the large hole, the warriors of the four divine kingdoms were still blankly staring at the battle in the sky. The strength of these Spirit Supreme Realm Masters was far beyond their imagination, but the evil dragon was also undeniably terrifying. It hadn't yet grown up, but its strength was equivalent to an 11th level vicious beast's, equal as well to that of the human Soul Sea Realm warrior. But an evil dragon of this level could fight against several Spirit Supreme Realm Masters with its own strength. When this evil dragon grew up, how terrifying would its strength be in the future? Of course, the Soul Sea Realm Masters were worried. They could barely protect themselves at the time. Most of them were already wondering how soon they would be killed. As Soul Sea Realm Masters, they were considered powerful among the four divine kingdoms. But when faced with the Spirit Supreme Realm Masters, they were practically nothing. And having their souls confined in the corpses didn't help, they didn't even have the strength to resist. Chapter 900. Seal itself. The Soul Sea Realm warriors of the four divine kingdoms understood that they could only let themselves be slaughtered since they lacked the ability to fight back. Once the Celestial Position members subdued the evil dragon, they would most likely kill them all. The members didn't need to kill them, but there was really no merit with letting them go. As the saying went, the weak will stand as easy prey to the strong. They were mere ants in the eyes of these Spirit Supreme Realm warriors. Each warrior that stood frozen against their will had differing views on their situation. Quite a few found themselves unable to accept the reality, and one of them was War Emperor York. At first, he had been unlucky and had been used as a bait to lure the evil dragon. However, his fate reversed when the evil dragon did not swallow him up and he was able to come back alive. Now with a second chance at life, War Emperor York was currently racking his brains trying to think of a way to escape from his current predicament. A few others, however, were not as afraid of death. War King Wind, for instance, did not mind dying that moment, though he did feel extremely guilty for bringing Fiona and Callan with him. A parent would never wish death upon his children after all. Fiona, on the other hand, was indifferent to her own fate, too busy worrying if Zen had managed to escape. Roar! The evil dragon let out another horrifying bellow, twisting its long and narrow body as it tried to drill itself back into the large crater. "Don't let it get in. Stop it," someone shouted. Max, the one who wore a silver mask, held up a bent walking stick in his hand and blocked the top of the crater ahead of others. Roar! The evil dragon seemed to be wary of Max and immediately fired its burning breath towards him. The sight of devastating flames would have made anyone panic, but nobody could tell with Max because of his mask. He looked calm though, as he lightly held out his walking stick and summoned an irregular crystal shield out of nowhere, protecting him from the dragon's attack. Noticing that its attack did nothing to its opponent, the evil dragon opened its mouth fully, intending to swallow Max whole. A fully grown dragon would be big enough to wrap itself around an entire continent, but this evil dragon was only at its infancy, so it was significantly smaller. However, it was still gigantic compared to Max. So when it opened its mouth, it could be compared to an eagle trying to swallow a mosquito. It would have been a funny sight if not for the context of the situation. Of course, Max wasn't going to let himself be eaten so easily. He quickly waved his walking stick and traced a circle in the air. "Spin around and go down," he muttered. The moment the evil dragon touched the circle, its entire body suddenly flipped itself. It was as if an invisible giant in the sky reached out and grabbed the beast, then threw it heavily to the other side. Boom! The evil dragon's body smashed onto the ground and caused a heavy tremor through the earth. Boom! The 4 Divine Kingdom warriors all fell to the ground from the shaking. Rocks had also been dislodged and were now on their way to smash them. It was fortunate that the corpses they occupied all had high cultivation levels that were able to smash the rocks that headed their way. These corpses served as shields that protected the souls within. The evil dragon was also fine. Though it had been smashed down by a heavy force, it did not sustain too much damage. Now that it realized that it could no longer return to its own nest, it immediately lay down on the ground with a huff and surrounded itself with a cloud of dust. Garbage! Stop it! It wants to seal itself! Max shouted, rushing towards the beast. The burly man, armed with a giant sickle in hand, rushed towards the evil dragon along with the others. However, as the man neared the dust cloud, a miraculous scene appeared. One would think that even an ordinary person without any cultivation would be able to rush towards a dust cloud with no problem. However, the burly man found himself unable to charge into the cloud, the dust acting as a natural barrier to keep intruders from venturing inside. Break it! The burly man immediately raised his giant sickle. Clang! He slashed through the air, but there was only a small spark. It had been unable to cut through the flying dust. His failure upset him greatly as he pulled a long face. And it wasn't just him. The others were also unable to break through the dust barrier. Max slowly floated over towards them and said, "This is troublesome. The evil dragon has really sealed itself. The method of sealing is an instinct of any super legendary beast." "How long will it last?" one of the members asked. "It won't be short, but it won't also be terribly long. It's extremely troublesome. Also, while it is sealed, it will undergo its 4th evolution. When that happens, we're all doomed." The evil dragon's 3rd evolution already required several Spirit Supreme Realm warriors. A 4th evolution would do wonders for its power. By then, only the executives of the celestial position race could probably deal with it. "What do we do now?" the burly man asked. He had been able to injure the evil dragon after activating his blood's berserk power, with great difficulty. None of them ever expected that the dragon would seal itself and that they'd be able to do nothing about it. Max only shook his head, his mask hiding his emotions. Since he was their leader, they would have no choice but to follow his orders. At that moment, 3 figures flew over from the horizon. Max looked up and tutted. "Let's not bother about this. It seems like the situation with Dorothea will be more troublesome." "More troublesome?" The burly man also raised his head to look and his bell-like eyes widened in surprise. "Dang, that woman took out the ancestral dragon's egg. And it's hatched. How can the ancestral dragon be in her hands?" "That woman," the burly man was referring to was actually Zen within Brianna's body. The scholarly man frowned. "What's going on with Dorothea? Why would she let that woman take the ancestral dragon?" Max sighed. "Even though I've had my luck boosted, it seems there's someone out there with a luck stronger than mine." He said those words bitterly. As a core member of the celestial position race, Max had once obtained a silver-colored title in the Tower of Illusory. After living for so long and undergoing a myriad of experiences, he had come to believe very much in destiny. Therefore, when he saw Zen with the ancestral dragon, he did not get angry but simply uttered a bitter sigh. "Dorothea, what's going on? How could you let her take the ancestral dragon?" the burly man cried out, staring at Zen with a deep frown. It was defeat after defeat. The evil dragon had sealed itself, which meant all their efforts had been in vain. And now, the ancestral dragon egg had been taken and actually hatched by a country bumpkin who had escaped from them. Dorothea's eyes flashed. She was too lazy to answer the burly man the moment she landed. "Dorothea, what's going on?" Max asked. "Is it because the ancestral dragon hatched when she rushed into the spire?" Dorothea nodded. "Sort of. But how did she break my enchanted barrier?" the scholarly man asked. He couldn't imagine just what kind of method Zen had devised to break the enchanted barrier he had set up so meticulously. Dorothea smiled lightly. "She has a supreme divine weapon in her possession, the Black Star. No matter how strong your enchanted barrier is, Delroy, it could never hope to stand against it. The law of causality contained in the Black Star is much stronger than yours.